closed session hearings we had to work through. So we are now in open session, and we're actually in the public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education to sell $12 million working cash fund bonds. Dr. Esler.
Thank you. So as part of any bond sale, there needs to be a hearing to alert the community that is our intention. And the purpose of the hearing is for anybody to ask any questions that they may wish to ask. It's open to the community, anybody that wants to ask that. So you're all the community out there. So anybody have any questions about the $12 million bond sale for working cash funds?
Why are we selling them?
No, thank you. For the community line. We're selling those funds for the purpose of remodeling our facilities. This is part of the other bond sales that are health, life, safety, which those are much more restricted in how they're spent. Working cash bonds can be sold for lots of reasons, but you must spend them for the reasons that you give. And so we are giving the reason for the facility, which is actually the truth, so that's not a problem. But we have some more flexibility about where we spend these in terms of what buildings, whereas the working cash fund bonds, when you sell those, you have to spend that money based on whatever the deficit is in the working cash, or I'm sorry, in the health, life, safety area. So this can be spread more randomly, depending on whatever the district decides over those facilities. But this is to fill the last part of the funding needed to do the overhaul of the facilities.
Seeing no other questions from the community. We have to adjourn and go into open?
Yes, you have to adjourn the hearing and go into open session.
Just double checking. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Lyon?
Oh, you can do a.
You could do it just all in favor.
All in favor?
Yep.
Yep.
All opposed? Any opposed?
Do I have a motion? Wait, I can just call to order.
Call to order.
I don't have my gavel.
Yeah, where's our cat? Right there. Come here.
Okay, I know this is gonna be a long night, folks.
Sure.
You know, the weather. Call this regular meeting of School Board District 205 to order. Allison.
Pickrell?
Here.
Sherwood?
Here.
Sherby? Statham?
Here.
Banks?
Here.
Cervantes?
Here.
Glasnovich?
Here.
Lyon?
Yes.
Okay, if we can all rise for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I am going to move the agenda around due to weather. We're going to do what we need to do and then go back to what we want to do. If that makes sense to everyone, okay? Just in case.
I want to do it all.
Well, we all want, yes, but there's some things we have to do in order for people to get paid. So we're going to do those things. So we're going to move to agenda item, the consent agenda item 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or anything needing to be removed? Allison?
Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Okay, next we're going to move to agenda item 10. We're going to consider approval of the, we want to jump, or we just want to do personnel? So we'll move to consider approval of the job descriptions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions about the descriptions.
Yeah, I guess in the summer school coordinator position, when it says STEM director as well, and I do know what STEM stands for. Does that mean, is that STEM for the summer or for the year round? What is that?
For the summer.
Just for the summer, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Allison?
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Schurke?
Aye.
Okay, consider approval of the personnel report. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Yes, as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Since this is part of our long discussion in closed session, I am assuming there's no questions, but I'll ask. Allison?
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Schurke? Statham?
Aye.
And then there's no further grievances, so we're good there.
Okay, so now we're going to move to agenda item 9, focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First, do we want to do that first, or do we want to do B first?
I would skip A.
We're going to go to agenda item 10, or 9C, consider approval of press policies on second reading, because it's just, should be pretty, hoping cut and dry. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? Did everybody review them? The changes that we had suggested at the last meeting have been made?
Can I ask one question though about one?
Yes.
On the 5-220 on the substitute teachers, are we currently using short-term substitute certificate people?
We are not because we have not drafted that agreement with the GEA as part of the statutory requirements of that. You have to have an agreement with the GEA. It's not a problem to have that in the policy because we can't do it until we have that agreement. If we want to go through that, the ROE will help us do that.
Is it something you're looking to do?
I don't think it's a bad idea.
Okay.
Just in the list of all the things that need to get done, that's been pushed down.
Okay.
But I think it's something worth exploring for sure.
Any other questions? Right. Allison?
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Schurke?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
I would like to make a comment that on the policy regarding the suicide prevention, they changed the grade levels. That's something we did previously on our president's recommendation when we reviewed them last year.
I know, somebody's listening somewhere, huh?
We were ahead of the curve on
Way to
that.
go.
We were. Okay, we'll move to the next item, D, consider approval of the 2019-2020 registration and student fees. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Ms. Han.
Okay, so before you tonight, you have recommendations for 2019-2020 registration fees. It is our hope to open registration on April 15th again. We're not recommending any changes except for the ones that we are required, and then Mr. Houston's gonna come up and give a presentation on driver's ed. They're recommending that we do increase driver's ed fees. The only increases that we have recommended are for breakfast and for lunch for students. The non-CEP schools, we are required to increase that 10 cents a year until until our costs, our prices, excuse me, are equal to our reimbursement. So currently, breakfast is reimbursed at $2.14, and lunch is reimbursed at $3.37. So you can see we're still below that, but we have to increase it every year by 10 cents. And then we had a recommendation from the state auditor that our adult lunch prices were low, so we're recommending increasing those by 20 cents.
Are there any questions? Mr. Houston?
I believe I shared the document with you guys before the meeting tonight. Just to go through the reason for what we're proposing. We've been backlogged in driver's ed, as you guys know, for a long time, and it's not gotten better.
We're doing what?
Backlogged as far as students needing time to drive.
Oh, okay.
And with the current situation that we're in, it's gotten worse. Since we're on the block, you're losing a lot of time on these days, almost like a double period on a traditional schedule for kids to make up this driving time. So we're kind of in an extreme situation, so we really had to rethink some of this. And I've worked with the department to do some research. A lot of our area schools are charging the full tuition, as you see there in yellow. They've raised it to $250. They know that it helps them offset the cost of after-school driving and weekend driving, which is something we're gonna have to do. We're backlogged from, I can't tell you when, probably 3 years ago, I would say that we were backlogged, and Ms. Ham and I have worked over the summer to try to get some of that made up. We've even hired someone to come in and help us get some extra hours behind the wheel so that we can make a dent in that. We're driving on some of the holidays and during school with another area driver's ed retired teachers. So we're trying to find ways to compensate that time to the best we can and get a return on our investment a little bit more. Like as I stated, the $250 charge is something some of the area schools are doing. They went with the max charge. So what we're offering, and this is not really anything different in our.
Excuse me, Jeff, you say max, is the max allowed by the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there's a 30, just to be clear, there's also a $20 charge for state fees on top of that they'll still pay, but that goes to the state for the eye test and the permit test. So that'll be on top of it. The $250 then, as you can see, and understand that we had to kind of estimate, I think I can do this, right?
Like make it larger.
Can I make that smaller so you can see it all? Whoa,
Oh, that was bad.
Allison, what am I doing? Can't I go smaller?
Don't make it smaller. What happened to that big screen you used to have?
What's that? Okay, that's a little better. I want you to be able to see that, right now, we're trying to serve 25 students a class, and you can do the math here on the side that we've done. But some of this is estimated cost too, because we have the estimated cost for what it costs us for a teacher. We have estimated costs for car lease that could change year to year, and who knows what the gas prices are gonna do. So some of these are estimated costs. But as you can see, we're still gonna lose the battle as far as money goes, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast. We've got behind because of extreme weather this year. We get behind because of, early outs. We get students who are sick. We get teachers who are sick. So as you guys know, we've been chasing that dog's tail for a long time to get it back to square. So this is what, after talking with some of the department people, Brad Swanson, Jeremy Pickrell said, we don't know what works because we never got to ground zero. So to
I'm
say
not sure
that this
that means.
place, what's that?
What do you mean gain ground? I don't know.
Ground zero, Mr. Lyons, would be like, we've never started the slate clean with just kids that are in the term and trying to get those kids driven, because we're playing catch-up with the kids who have been behind for whatever reason. And so we're always playing catch-up. And I've been in driver's ed a long time before I did this job, and this is kind of the nature of the beast a little bit, that you kind of chase that a little bit. But in these situations, like I said, on the block losing these days, it's really kind of magnified it. So pushing this to a $250 student overall cost, we're at $75,000 with the reimbursement, as you can see. We're still showing a loss, even trying to get all the kids driven in a term's time. But we feel like we'll be a lot closer, and we think we can get it done if we can get back to zero. But like I said, we can't get there. Classroom teacher teaches Tuesday through Thursday on this new model. What we felt like, that's a new instructional design moving forward, rather than we were driving them and then, or teaching them and then putting them in a library and then driving them after that. We feel like this stretching out the curriculum will be a lot better for the students than driving them on Mondays and Fridays with a teacher the second classroom teacher and then having a teacher drive all day long is what this model's showing here, is indicating. We also, students and parents are still responsible for a state permit, as I said, of $20. We surveyed other districts around us, and many are charging the full price of $250. We are asking that the fee is paid in full before they are enrolled, because we feel like we're a collection agency if we don't do that too. It's kind of hard, because students won't pay and they'll get enrolled, and then we're trying to figure out what they owe, and we're chasing that as well as also their driving time. So if a student gets ready to graduate, they may have a bill sitting there that they still owe for driver's ed, or they might have some other bills that are kind of stacking up on them. So we feel like this is a better design that will help families not get so far behind before the student graduates in 4 years too. So they won't hold that balance on their Skyward account.
What requirements do we have? I mean, it was over 20 years ago.
Yeah, and that's changed.
So do they, like when I was in school, I had to have a certain GPA, I had to have my health done, I had to have so many, I think, sections of PE done before I could even enroll.
It was 6 of 8, I believe, and there's some new law that says 8 of 8, is what I
Last 2
understand.
semesters.
The last 2 semesters. Passing 8 of 8 is what I think our policy states.
Well, just so you know, the board policy states specifically, it's 8 of 8 that they can apply for specific exemptions to meet. So if somebody has some extenuating circumstances, they can be waived from that 8 of 8 requirement, but we have to look at those on an individual basis.
Okay. And the state requires that we drive 6 hours.
Right.
Like, there's no exception, they have to have 6 hours in the car.
With the teacher.
Right.
50.
And then you get into I'll even say, I can remember back when I drove, you get into transportation problems, say we want to drive over the summer or on the weekends, some of those kids can't get over to the school to drive. So there were times we would drive to the house and pick those kids up and then drive them. So there's just so many outliers. That's why we get behind. There's just so many variables that you're trying to predict and get ahead of.
Well, and the other thing you haven't mentioned, it's a very large problem, is you never ride with one student. And so if there's 2 students or even 3 students, and then a couple of them don't show up, the one that did can't drive, because you have to have at least 2 students.
Right, I mean, when I was in school, I did summer, so I had an hour class, hour simulator, hour on the road, and that hour was split between 3 students, so it was 20 minutes. But my class was done in 10, like, not even 10 weeks, because it was summer.
And that back then, we had 2 cars going out, plus the simulator teacher, plus the classroom teacher. There were 4 teachers,
Yeah.
because I had just come to the district at that time. Couldn't find the people, yeah. A lot of the old-time retired instructors we used to have, they've kind of not decided to do it either anymore. They're truly retired now. So it's kind of hard to find that. And I'll be honest with you, some of our teachers are coaches, so they have busy seasons too. So trying to find coaches to drive after school, during a hot season gets difficult at times.
So according to your spreadsheet here, 300 students take driver's ed a year.
Yeah, I mean, roughly, that's 25 students, yeah, per class.
So is that how many were registered this year?
I'd have to look, I'd have to pull
Okay.
those numbers more for you, so that you could get a better determination.
Okay.
Like I said, these are estimated, because there's some things that, you just can't.
And when you say you're recommending that they pay in full for their enrolled, or before they start the
To
first day
secure their
class?
spot on the roster, yes.
To
Before they
secure
take
the
the
spot on
class.
the roster.
Be
Before they
before
take.
the start of the school year, though.
What's
The
that?
class roster.
I believe it's before the start of the school year, isn't it,
For next year.
Ms. Ritchie? Yes, so it's not,
So when they register, they can sign up for driver's ed.
right, so they're
Right.
doing registration right now, and so the parents would be receiving some kind of a letter stating that your child's enrolled for the 2019-2020 school year for driver's ed. You need to have that fee paid in full before the first day of school. And if
Okay.
not, then that gives the counselors an opportunity to reassign those students to other classes.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be done at the time they enroll on April 15th?
No, No.
And the counselors have been calling those kids down for next year's classes already in that conversation, so there's no surprises.
So only
I
use the
think-
driver's ed class 2 days, cars 2 days a week? Mondays and Fridays?
One teacher's always driving.
One teacher's
One
always
teacher's
driving.
always, so one, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
One teacher's always driving Monday through Friday, and then we'll have class Tuesday through Thursday. So on Monday and Friday, we'll have the second car going out, making sure we're getting behind wheel time.
Okay, it's a second teacher.
Yeah.
There's
Yes, sir.
always another one. Okay.
And then you have before and after school and holidays and stuff.
Yes, when we can, yes,
Weekends.
yes. Yes. You know, the other thing I would say is that the block schedule does make it a little more difficult for us to pull students out of classes. Sometimes when we want to make up a student, pull them out of a physical education class is a lot easier than pulling them out of a math, science, or English class.
Well, okay. So, one of the other things that has been brought up with their school school days closing is that for some of our vocational, right, if they don't have certain amount of hours, they're not able to complete, and they might have to do something else. I mean, we're hoping to find a solution to that. But given you have to have a minimum hours of driving and you miss so many days because you're sick, isn't that grounds to say you have to repeat the class, or no?
Yes. And we have those students who don't show up to drive when they're scheduled to drive, and they go to the bottom of the list, and then they have to pay. They'll also pay to re-enroll in the class, or re-enroll in the driving.
So this discussion right now is on the fee, correct?
Correct, we're looking at a $20 increase.
But I just felt like you need to understand why we're looking to increase it, because of the extra driving time we're
Right, we asked Mr. Houston to justify the extra $20 on the recommendation, so that's what he said.
I don't see why we're not raising the parking fee, but we'll take
Right, yeah. Any questions?
every year.
I have a lot, but I don't know if it's pertinent to the discussion. So how many hours do we estimate that we have total availability to drive?
Classroom teachers, let's see, 700 hours per year is what we've got, but,
That'd be within the day, right?
yeah.
So that's not estimating the extra time, right? That's
10
what
hours.
we're figuring based on our
That's just contractual.
classroom day. Okay.
Yeah, because it's hard to make those extra hours because we don't know who's available to drive.
We're voting on
I
the
mean, we're,
fees.
in this plan, you've got 720 hours, Mr. Montes. In this plan, you've got 720 hours allocated. That's 3 to 5, driving 3 to 5 Monday through Friday. That's 2 cars after school.
So we're trying to serve 180 more students than we have hours to drive.
Pretty close, probably. Haven't done the math on that, but.
Well, I just divided 720 hours divided by 6, and I got 120. So I'm assuming that's 120 students, and we're trying to serve 300. That could be part of it.
And here again, that's depending on,
You actually have 1,025, because you pick up that classroom teacher for 325 hours, and then you have one person that's just doing behind the wheel at 700, correct?
right.
So you're really at 1,020, is that right? Is that 25? Yeah, 1,025.
Yeah, it'd be 2025.
Well, and I don't want to, Mr. Houston said this several times, but in, other districts where I've worked, where you have a traditional schedule, it's generally easy to pair it with a study hall or a driver's, or a PE, or your health, or you have some partner class. I've created these schedules myself as a high school principal. So you partner that behind the wheel time with something that they can get pulled out of. Well, in our situation here, I certainly don't fault the parents for saying, I don't want my child being pulled out of algebra or English or chemistry, and, not that those other classes aren't important too, but when those other ones are cumulative and have tests and, there's lots, that's a problem, you're pulled out for 90 minutes. And so, the schedule makes it more difficult here, in addition to all the other issues that, he's brought up. And really, we're trying to get to some place where we can get that backlog whittled down to where we can find a spot where this would be more predictable. But it's been very unpredictable because we've had this continuous backlog.
And the reason those numbers were low, we might end up with 27, 28 kids in driver's ed, it may not be 25. That's what I'm saying, the base number could change on enrollment. I mean, you could have an extra 15 kids, depending on that term, block 1, 2, and 3, so you could have an extra 15 kids on top of that.
How?
Well, because I'm saying 25 students, but there, you could end up with 28 kids, first block, and 27 kids, second block, and so on and so forth, depending
Not
on
if we're setting
schedules.
caps. Do we set caps on them?
Yes.
27.
So, each is doing an average of 25.
I recommend we raise it to $250.
Second.
Well, that's already,
Yeah, we got
we've got that motion.
So we just need
We
to.
do?
Pickrell and member Glassman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay,
You just have to do as intended.
okay. Any other questions for Mr. Houston?
This seems like a larger problem than $20, so it needs to be looked at, and I'm sure it's on your list somewhere.
We've
We've
been
been, yeah.
Well, I think
looking at
that's-
this for the
That's why
4
they
years.
met, and that's why they
Right, what
come
do
up with
we-
this new schedule, which
But
is,
until you get to ground, Mr. Pickrell keeps saying, until we get to ground zero, we won't know if this works or not.
Well, and Mr. Swanson and Mr. Pickrell and Mr. Gross spent time with us this fall and tried to go through it, and I understand it a lot better now. I feel like they have a grasp on what the solution is, it's just trying to get the time and the availability to do
See
it.
if it'll work or not.
Yeah, they did a really nice job
Thank
presenting all the
There's a
options.
museum there.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
yeah, thank you. My other question is, do we have, because I know that when we pulled out the activity fee, if I'm not mistaken, we had a conversation when we pulled out the activity fee, that we wanted feedback about how that went. Right, because there was some concerns presented last year when we did that some parents and some families would not recognize that they needed to go back and get that activity fee.
We did, we can provide that feedback in a much more reasonable manner next month.
I
Yeah.
have, I actually have that.
Okay,
That's the
Yeah.
file. I can grab that really quickly for you. I have all the numbers of how it's broken down by grade level, so.
But do you have any qualitative data? I don't know, I've never asked them to compile that yet.
Is it all right to just do that next month, look at that next month?
yeah, because I do want to see it. I mean, we talked about it, so how it's going to work, and
yeah.
Yeah, so Allison, you write that down, we'll make sure we come back on that next week.
who made the motion on the fees?
Ms. Pickrell.
Would she be willing to amend it to include the increase in driver's ed fees?
And then member Glasnovich seconded.
Are you going? Thank you.
I also have a question about the yearbooks too, because I know that there was some concern about the way we were doing fees would impact sales of yearbooks as well.
So you'll look at that for next month as well?
Right, I do remember that discussion. See if we had a reduced number because we didn't have it as part of registration.
Right. We only asked for required fees, and then after that, people had to then pick up the activity fee and pick up the yearbook fee.
So we'll make
And there was
sure we get
concern that
back.
there would be,
So we'll get historical as much as we can, data, at least recent historical of how many yearbooks we sold during registration and then how much we've sold now that we don't do it. We'll provide that next month.
okay, which doesn't have anything to do with what we're actually
Correct.
charging.
But we did discuss that
But-
last year, to be fair, yeah.
I do want to know that, because that conversation about process and how we're going to move forward with registration is like legitimately around the corner, right?
Yes.
April
Is it like
15th, or
April?
April 15th.
That's what I thought, okay. All right, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, now, any other questions? With the amended amount for driver's ed, the motion is on the table. Allison?
Glasnovich?
Yes.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye.
Stathan?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes?
I hate increasing fees. No. Next, we have consider approval of the routing software bid. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Ham?
Okay, I'm actually going to ask Mrs. Earp to come up here and talk about the routing software. She's been doing, I know, she does hate this. I'm sorry. She's been doing the research on really the two different main routing software packages that we have to offer.
Yeah.
Stand right there, that's fine.
Go. The podium would be
She didn't
good.
tell me I was gonna have to do this. We went out for bid for routing software, and I knew nothing about routing software until we did this. And we received two bids, one from TransFinder and one from Edgelog. And in doing the, talking to both companies, which as you can see, TransFinder, I don't have the figures in front of me, but TransFinder is considerably higher. But it is a partner, they are partners with Skyward, and everything just works automatically with Skyward. Whereas Edgelog, they can write software to make it work with Skyward. But in all of the references I've talked to with Edgelog, they said that they were all told the same thing and it didn't happen. That's not to say that it couldn't happen. But everyone I talked to with TransFinder was almost giddy talking about the company. Edgelog was, they're okay. You know, this could be better, their maps aren't very good. But I'll be honest with you, I've never worked with software, so I am only going with what I've been told. But I do recommend TransFinder. And TransFinder could also replace our 5 maps. We would no longer have to subscribe to the 5 maps.
So what?
5 maps is
The
part of
5
our-
maps that we
Just
use
did
for the
that.
boundary setting.
Right, so we have the other parts of that still.
And this is reimbursable through the transportation
Yes.
claim as well. So we would be
Correct.
reimbursed 80% of the
Right.
cost of the transportation claim.
Correct. So I had asked Ms. Zerp to do this as we are too big of a district to be relying on just human beings for where the routes go. And so Ms. Zerp does a wonderful job, but I don't think she plans to work here forever. And
Did you ask her?
it was implied in the eye roll she gave me. I was a communications major, I can read that. No, in all sincerity, it really is incumbent upon this district to have that data and house it here. And the reason I would very strongly recommend that we approve the bid to TransFinder is in working with other third-party vendors, it's not advisable for us to ask First Student to do that, because if they go out and get it, then they own the data, and if whatever happens where we're not using them anymore, now we have to go out and recreate that in a summer when we're transitioning transportation. That's a bad idea. And so we're really looking at, about $25,000 expense, but you're gonna get 80% of that back. And then the annual cost after that is 20% of that 5,500. And I have used TransFinder in 2 different districts. It works very well with Skyward. It's seamless. It works very well. So I've been very happy with it in my experience. Did not, that wasn't a reason that they got to win the bid, but it is a nice plus for me, knowing that I've worked with them, and they're very easy to work with. And it is very important that it pairs with your Skyward system, believe me. If you don't, it's just a nightmare, because you're going to have to repopulate all that student data into another area. When we have 4,300 students and all that data and has to get repopulated into something else, that's a problem. So this is a bonus that it talks to Skyward very seamlessly. And I wholeheartely recommend we approve this bid.
Will this be paid for out of the transportation budget?
Yes, it's paid for out of the transportation fund, and it's an approved cost by ISBE for reimbursement in the transportation reimbursement system.
And the initial setup, does that include the first year's annual cost, or is that?
Yes.
No, the initial setup?
The first year's.
The first year's
Yes.
included in
Oh,
that.
I'm wrong.
Yes.
I'm wrong
We
then.
just saved $5,000.
That's right, so there you go. The $19,000 is all-inclusive on the first year. So, we're gonna just pay 20% of that, so $4,000. But that's a very reasonable price for having the peace of mind of knowing where our students are, knowing we have to change routes on the fly, knowing where everybody is.
I move that we did. We already do that?
We already did that.
I can't remember anything tonight.
Yeah, I know. That's okay.
Oh.
Are there any other questions regarding this bid?
Thank you, Paul.
No other questions? Allison?
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye. Schrerbie?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Klasnivich?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna move to item F, consider approval of trip request. Dr. Austin.
Thank you. Mr. Spindler is here to give the contour details of what the trip request is. But because of the weather, I would ask Mr. Spindler to remember that we need to brief. All right.
As a brief overview then, I'm presenting a little bit about the German exchange program, very briefly, because none of the board members were ever part of the initial approval, just to give us some context. In 2012, Galesburg approved a German-American Partnership Program exchange, which is sponsored by German Educational Exchange Service, U.S. Department of State, among other things, which provides primarily assistance in forms and procedures and ways to go about things. And since then, we've done, this will now be our 5th cycle that we're into right now, in which we accept, at this point, 18 German students and 2 teachers for about 3 weeks here, and we travel over there for about 4 weeks. Odd years, they visit during the spring. Even years, we travel during this summer. Our partner school is Wildeshausen, Germany. It's in North Germany. Of everything I do in the school, this is the thing that I find to be the most impactful, in my opinion. It really has a huge impact on that. My specific request with this, as part of the, so that's basic overview things. The rest were kind of in your notes. Would you like more basic overview things about the program in general? Okay. Then, regarding the specific request, when the program was approved, it was approved with the travel to Germany being the point of the program. Hence, last year, when this came about, I asked and filtered things up there to follow through on that, to make sure we didn't need specific board approval, and was told that it was approved as part of the program being the point of it, so I didn't need to ask. When I came around to this year, I was starting to proceed under that assumption and realized that we didn't quite have that for the Chicago part, but we've always done a side trip from the standpoint that, one, for our partners, it's extremely important to them that they see part of the U.S. besides just Galesburg. For us, that's primarily been a side trip to Chicago. We do some other local things around here. It's a wide variety of options. Weekends are open to family activities, so they go many different places. But this is our kind of way of making sure that they see something in common and that they have some things in common with the group. We've always accompanied our partners. That's generally encouraged to provide more cross-cultural contact and not just a trip to the United States for the German students, but rather that they're kind of exploring and coming about that together. At various years, we've done this different times. Right now, this one is to be during spring break as the proposed time period. The reason for that is that the German teachers get off a very specific time period that they are able to get their tickets each year, which is basically they get 2 weeks for Easter break. They miss 2 weeks of school and the first week of their 2 weeks of spring break. And this year that happened to fall in them arriving during our spring break, which is not my preferred option, but happens to facilitate meeting and to make sure that the students better integrate and are not just off with host families that they don't know during spring break when people are at work and the students are at home. We moved our trip from the usual spot at the end of the exchange to the very beginning to kind of begin and set ourselves up. So what I'd potentially like from this is if possible, an approval of in addition to this as part of the exchange program would be my ideal request. But in the event that's not possible, then I would like an approval for this year's trip to Chicago with our group. So I don't know if that's possible. I tried.
Well, I will explain why it's not.
Okay. Very good.
So one board cannot encumber another board's decision.
Okay.
So that's why when you have year lags like that, I would say that you can't do that.
Very
I would
good.
recommend that you not do it anyway.
That's fine.
Yeah, you just need to ask those on a yearly basis,
Okay.
or as needed basis.
As in basis, okay. Very good. So regarding the specific Chicago trip, it's been kind of, the information's been provided to students regarding some of the details. I've given a sample of previous trips of the sorts of things that we engage in. I managed to find a number of discounts and a variety of things because we are a group and a school group. For instance, our museum visits are free. We can get group prices for boats, for boat tours and other things. And it provides a really good exposure to the city and things of that nature. So I guess that's, any more questions for me?
Any other questions from board members?
Why the Cubs, I guess?
Well, that was that year. This year is not the Cubs, it's too early. This year, we have potentially, hopefully, Blackhawks tickets, standing room only, $10 a piece. So that's what we have for that part, and the intention is also to do Hamilton. But I kind of need to make sure that you want to be part of this. Very good. If there are any more questions, then I'll return to my seat.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion to approve this year's trip as outlined.
Second.
Any other additional questions? Allison?
Pickrell.
Aye.
Sherby.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Banks. Aye. Cervantes.
Aye.
Glasnovich.
Aye.
Lyon.
Yes.
Okay, so as much as we want to talk about the calendar, we're going to go back to the beginning.
There you go.
We didn't have any community member visitors or anything else. Okay, so we'll move to agenda item 5, presentations to the board. I do not see a member of student council here. So we'll move to the K through 4 specialist committee presentation. Ms. Springer.
Mr. Bradburn, if you could come up to the podium. Members of the committee, if you'd like to come in these front rows and join us. We had a tremendous group effort after several weather cancellations, put our work kind of in a more expedited process. We met Monday, Wednesday, and all day Friday. Look at that fabulous group.
Plus 2 members over here. Plus 2 members over here.
Yes, we had
Member Glasnovich.
Gina, Member Glasnovich, and I'll call you by your first name. Yes, and then Mr. Sherby. So I also joined in on the work, but Mr. Bradburn was the head of the committee, so I'll let him begin.
Thank you. Good evening. Like you said, we did have some weather challenges. We had originally scheduled 4 meetings. We had 3 meetings last week. So the committee was comprised of members that we've already talked about. I want to thank the committee members for their work. That was a lot of hard work. So we started our work with 10 guiding questions, and as we began, went through the meetings, we pared those questions down to 7. When we're asking questions about creating the best special schedule we could with the elementary buildings. Can we provide more physical activity for our students each day? Is it possible to maintain the same number of days of art and music? How do we preserve, maximize instructional minutes each day? Is it possible to build a collaborative time for grade level teachers? Can we incorporate STEM and keyboarding into our daily practice? Does our schedule promote instructional innovation, common planning time? Is it possible to incorporate foreign language in our daily schedule? The proposal we're going to discuss tonight will be able to answer yes to 6 of the 7 questions. Adding foreign language was desired by the committee. We tried. We were looking at that, but we were not able to make this work in a way that the committee members felt that they could recommend. Staffing being one of those, just trying to work it into the slots we had available. So I'd like to turn your attention now to the special ideas explained, I believe is in your packet for this, where we were looking at the questions that we did answer. The committee would like to recommend that we do physical education every day. We tried to do a 20-minute physical education class. We know the students need to move every day. More increased physical activity was something that was in the feedback that the committee went and they polled their colleagues and friends and family members, and we got that. We have the facilities to do that. We have a separate gym and a proposal for this, and the cafeterias, the multipurpose rooms can be used. It's going to take 2 physical education teachers, and we were able to fill this in. We need to be able to plan for 25 sections for the larger buildings. We would like to have a 3-day rotation. We were looking at a 4-day rotation for specials classes, but it was decided by the committee that that would lessen the time in art and music. We didn't want to do that. So the 3-day rotation that we did, we also looked at, could we do like 9 weeks of a special where the students went every day for music for 9 weeks and then every day for art. And the specials teachers gave us some feedback that was not desirable. They wanted to see the kids in the elementary a little more than just 9 weeks. So they wanted to see them more. The 3 rotation that we'd like to recommend is that we have art, music, and then science, technology, engineering, and math / tech. The reasons for that was we wanted to make sure we bolster the technology skills at the elementary level. And that we had the problem solving, the science, technology, engineering, and math we talked about, adding instructional technology. We also want to talk about 3rd and 4th graders being exposed to keyboarding, because that's something that we need at that level.
And how long would these be each for art, music, and STEM?
So it would be 45 minutes in keeping with the contract. So what we are
So where does
proposing,
the PE come out of then?
it's a 20-minute section, it's a 20-minute class separate from the specials rotation. So they would have 45 minutes where on a rotation where they'd go on a 3-day rotation, but every student would go to PE every day for 20 minutes. In doing this, the committee was got a lot of feedback. They wanted to add instructional time built into the day. So once we add this proposal that adds 45 minutes to the instructional day, we're proposing a start time of 8 o'clock and an end time of 3:15. Provides 7 hours and 15 minutes of school day. If you take this out, it also provides around 6 hours of instructional time. We want to preserve time. The committee was very committed to having the PE and the physical activity every day, maintaining the specials, which is contractual, for the prep time for the teachers. We also wanted to have enough time for an English language arts block of at least 90 minutes and more if we could fit it in, at least an hour or more for math. We wanted to make sure there was time for science and there was time for social studies during the day. And so, okay, I think that's, I don't think I left anything out there. Let's bring it up.
I don't believe so.
So there's 6 hours of instruction remaining in the day. Recess, this is an idea that came out of the committee work, was to have a 40-minute lunch period. The purpose of that is to provide time for them to have recess during their lunchtime. So they would have time, 20 to 25 minutes to eat as we're rotating the students through the cafeteria, but time to go out and have a recess. So we're trying to increase, and in keeping with the guiding question of can we add physical activity during the day, having PE and then having a recess at the elementary level is something we wanted to do. They need to play in short bursts throughout the day. And we're trying to preserve instructional minutes due to the lunchtime pairing. So instead of having to have a recess, can I add something?
I agree with you. I mean, that was the point I was going to emphasize. The whole goal was to have fewer transitions. So when students would have typically had the lunch recess time, then we're going out. When we lost that, we recognized that students were having a greater difficulty in the afternoons of trying to keep focus because they still had energy to burn. Within the special schedule and the PE, we've tried to put in purposeful transitions. So when you have that instructional chunk, then you may use the restroom and then go to that next activity rather than having these scattered pieces that just ate away from your instructional time. So, go ahead.
And
The
are
last
we
thing on
doing
my
that by
table-
having a 20-minute PE time cut out of it? I don't see where the PE comes out of it. Do you have a picture of what the day would look like for a student? You don't have that.
I just provided the special schedule itself for you.
Huh?
It was the special schedule I provided, that one,
You saw that?
yes.
These are all mine, too.
I sent it via email.
Yeah.
Have you an email?
Here, here's
I didn't
one.
see. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Thank you.
Ms. Bradburn, I think it's important to indicate that PE, daily activity, that's actually a mandate for us and not just a want.
One of the
No,
pieces-
according to the policy, it's 3 out of 5 days.
Our
I
policy,
just read it today.
According to the state.
We were able to apply for a waiver in the past, but with a separate gym facility, we would need to provide PE. We actually have the facility for it, if we have the gym and the cafeteria / multipurpose room, whatever you want to call it. And with 2 teachers, I'm able to, over the lunchtime, we were able to kind of crunch the numbers, and I can actually make that work. Craig Leftak was also a member of our committee. He was instrumental in trying to come up with an appropriate time frame that he thought would be beneficial for K-4 students. He also went to the National Fitness Guidelines and checked to make sure the square footage on those gyms that we have would be appropriate, and we did meet those regulations. So a classroom for K1-2, next year's max size would be 24, 3 and 4 would be 26, and we were well within our range.
So
For square
these
footage.
PE classes are just going to be one class at a time? We're not combining classes?
We would have,
No, we would, but during, for the kindergarten block, during the lunchtime.
we would have 2 teachers teaching in one space.
Right.
I think your indication was maybe 50 kids to 1 teacher. It's 2 teachers to those number of kids.
That's why we look at the square footage.
And I'm not a certified PE teacher for elementary school. I'm just curious. I like the work, I mean, and it's a vast improvement, and I appreciate it. I just don't understand how you get the activity started, get the activity winded up in 20 minutes.
They would.
I mean, the rest of it, I really like, I really appreciate the work. There is no perfect answer for delivering.
I've seen it work too, but when I taught in Monmouth, we had 20-minute PE periods,
Well,
and
in
they
my-
put it up against music.
I was gonna say, in my book, it doesn't necessarily always have to be an organized activity, right? You could put some music on and say, we're gonna dance our, jitters away. Having trouble sitting in your seat? Okay, we're gonna go to the gym, we're gonna, dance. Or
PE
we're gonna,
curriculum,
like-
though, don't we?
Well,
We asked Craig about that,
Yeah.
because my concern too was two things. When we talked a couple of years ago about having PE and every day, and it was going to be combining classes. This hope was to divide, we had partitions in the gym, so we had two separate spaces for one thing. And I asked him about the 20 minutes, is that doable? Because that was a concern I had also, and he said yes. So I was basing it upon what the PE teacher,
Right.
And he went out to other PE teachers and asked that same question, what would be a doable time frame? They were all satisfied with 20
The committee did a
minutes.
great job in giving feedback in a real short timeline. They worked really hard to go out and get that information, bring it back to us.
Mr. Stevens to explain that a little bit more. I've had that same concern. Like Mr. Lopez did explain to me that, with it being every day instead of every 3 or 4 days like it is now, you could take a little more time, maybe one day to do the directions and instructions, play a little bit, and then pick right up off the next day where you left off. Today, my class that went for 45 minutes, came back with based, and I said, wow, you worked hard. They said, we played 3 different games today.
Mhm.
So, with the younger kids, it is easier to play a shorter amount of time, I believe, and and seeing him every day too.
No, I-
They don't have to review the directions quite as often as you would on a 3 or 4 day rotation.
The last part of the recommendation is something that the committee talked about. I'm excited about it just for time with the teachers, is trying to do a built-in delayed start or early dismissal, depending on the board's direction, each week. That would allow built-in professional development time, meeting time, faculty time, school improvement time. It would be regularly scheduled so that people could plan for it. And so that was something that the committee put in there. We would look at probably a 90-minute delayed start. I don't think we wanted to do a 2-hour. We originally talked about a 2-hour. We didn't think a 1 hour would be enough because of time, you get everybody organized. You want to have a good, solid, at least an hour, a little bit more for that time, and plan for. I'd like to have that time with teachers.
Well, and this is in contrast with our current calendar where we have half-day school improvement days, we have 1 hour early dismissals, we have 2 hour early dismissals. We have teachers in the K-5 doing grade level meetings after school when they can meet feasibly together. Right, and this is built into the school day, so if you're thinking about the buildings moving to 5 sections of each grade level potentially, you're gonna need to get all of those people on the same page and work on some curricular initiatives. And this just builds that in. This also gets the administrator in front of the teachers being able to work on school improvement goals and, have that consistent, regular meeting time to move the needle.
Absolutely.
And how often would that be?
Every week.
Weekly on
Once a week?
Wednesdays.
Yep, we'll figure like Wednesday would be a delayed
Have you
start.
looked at what that'll do to this schedule then?
It would just be a 2 hour delay, like we'd have to prepare for a weather day. Like if we had a late start, we would just do a late start weather day. Yes, so it would minimize.
So every Monday or whatever,
Every Wednesday, yeah.
whatever day it is, the people that have it in the morning just are out of luck.
No, you shorten all the pieces of the schedule, kind of like you would do with one.
Oh, all
day.
right, okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, that'll eliminate some resources. Okay, gotcha.
Are there any other questions we can answer on the recommendation?
Can I bring one thing to your attention? The schedule that's before you is just a sample. I mean, it's something that the committee, we thought, put together and tried to make sure the minutes worked and the sections worked. I want you to recognize, however, we do have the sections in there, but perhaps if you go look at the schedule, it says 2E has PE in the gym at 8:05 to 8:25. It has not yet been rectified on the other side for the specials component where 2E is at that time. So if you see them double blocked, it's just because we want to make sure we fit in the sections. It will definitely work. One other thing I don't think we talked about was K1. It was a recommendation of the specials teachers to reduce some of their specials times due to their attention and just their need to move and groove. So we have 27 minutes for their specials time, but building in that 45-minute prep period, so that 27 minutes fits inside the 45, we would have a teacher's aide come and take them to a restroom break, so you're cutting down on transitional time there as well, taking the restroom break and then do like a read aloud. So it builds in that 45, so it's equitable for all the staff members as well. But the students are also having more instructional time.
I think it's great work. It's an example of thinking outside the box and saying, scratch everything. What do we want? What can that look like? So I think it's great.
And you notice the start time for elementary is early, which is kind of setting the tone for moving forward up the grade levels to see if we want to make a change in the upper grades to when they start school.
The only other thing that I would add, and not that you have to go back to the drawing board, but, when my son, when we lived in Chicago, he went to a language academy. So Spanish was just the language and it was part of his core curriculum. But in addition to that, they had a volunteer who taught Latin in the morning, 3 days a week. And so you could opt into that program if you wanted to. So if we're looking at ways to introduce language at an earlier age, it could be that we, maybe we do just to try it out, maybe you do it like an after school, something, and have like a.
Well, I talked to someone today, just in conversation, because we're constantly problem solving that, because we all like the idea too. It was just a matter of how the instructional minutes fit in the day, and we didn't want to do a poor job in doing that by just finding minutes here and there. I think that was the consensus of the group. But someone said, what if you offered a language club? So if students were interested, maybe that delayed start would be a weekly time that they could meet to work on those. I mean, I'm confident I have a couple people that probably would be willing to do that.
So we're talking about introducing language, right? So
I mean, that could be a partnership with a local college too, where they have students who are majoring in those languages.
We also have high school students possibly.
Absolutely.
Because the kids do it. I had a German club after school when I taught.
There might even be an opportunity for tutoring in the morning when you can't do it in the afternoon, things like that. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Well, I'm just gonna add that's some big shoes to fill because the rest of the committees have a lot more time on their hands to get to some places like that. I know.
Okay, great.
We'll move to the next agenda item, agenda item 7, focus area 1. Relevant skills that lead to employability. First on that is the administrative report on curriculum, Mrs. Springer.
I am about as tired of hearing about the writing rubric and public speaking rubric presentation as you are. I mean, we've had probably 6 or 7 rescheduled meetings. I promise, we really are doing the work. It's not smoke and mirrors. I just met with the 712 committee tonight. We're working on a fabulous rubric for the high school. We have 3, we have an argumentative, a narrative, and an expository / informative rubric. What I'd like to do, we're gonna meet back again. Julie Gustafson was not available tonight, partly because she was out of town and the weather was getting bad, so we told her to head home. She and Bree Hankus are going to get together and do some final edits on the 712 doc. K-5 docs are done, so I'm pretty excited about that. And we'll have some teacher resources. So what the teachers will be able to get is basically a packet of resources. If I'm a science teacher, I can pull the rubric for that grade level and utilize that. So we wanted to make sure it was appropriate for every core curriculum to be able to pull those docs and use those as the expectation for writing at the specific level. Ms. Ritchie, am I missing anything from tonight? It's pretty productive, though. Public speaking rubrics are well on their way. We have a pretty neat idea for presentation for the board on that one, so I can't wait for that one. I'm going to be part of the high school group in that one, okay, Mr. Houston? Yeah, we're going to knock it out of the park. Okay, let's see. K-5 curriculum leaders, we're all participating in this K-4 specials development, and they did a significant amount of work. I'd like to thank them for that. We have district improvement team meetings. Our meeting on the 18th was positive. Our third quarter meeting, as it states there, is December 4th. Oh, that should not say December 4th. It should say March 4th.
Yeah, March.
Let's not go back in time. Instructional coaching, we have 2 more days. We have next Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be talking about positive coaching for achievement, positive coaching for engagement, and positive classrooms. Those will be the topics for our training. Again, we've added another 10 members, so I have 55 people coming to the training from school districts all around, so that's pretty exciting. Again, that will be at Knox. You are more than welcome to come sit in on a session or come in for an hour or something on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. I appreciate you being there, and I'm sure the coaches would love that. I've been working with Mr. Bradburn on summer school. We are going to be offering summer school for kindergarten through 12th grade. I put a plea out for teachers to teach summer school. The morning time will be remediation, so we'll be doing English language arts and math. And then they'll have a lunch period, and then they will have an exploratory time with science and technology. We want to do a lot of problem solving and building. We'd like to incorporate some of the fine arts and do those kind of things. I mean, think of it kind of as a carrot for those kiddos. If they can really plug through the morning, we can give them some opportunities to try out some learning with some hands-on activities. And then the 9-12 will be more of a credit recovery model. We'll do credit recovery with our Edgenuity. And then we're going to work on some executive functioning. Some of that, and I say that as far as goal setting and making sure you're managing your time well and teaching those skills. So we can't just naturally assume that we're in a credit recovery state for that, just because of a variety of factors. But we need to make sure that we're actually teaching them some appropriate skills to help them be successful outside of the classroom and inside the classroom and long term.
How many students are you projecting to be in the elementary program?
We're going to have 2 classrooms at each grade level of 15 each. Yes. We'd like to have the classrooms smaller to be able to do a little more intensive work with them. Very good question.
And that's going to be at Willard?
That is going to be at Silence. Actually, the whole program, the whole summer school will be at Willard, K-12.
So the high school will be there as well?
Yes. And so I have four positions, Mr.
So
Bradburn.
this is
for high school.
practice when we put 7-12 together, huh?
There we go. I'll come up with a creative schedule right now. I also have Ben Bredemeyer, is he here tonight? He usually is here.
I don't see any red jackets out there.
Right, Wisconsin. So late spring, John, was it late spring that he met with Knox College? I think it was late spring.
I believe April.
Okay. He met with Paul Steenis and a group of people from Knox College, and they had kind of talked about something similar to a Beloit Scholars Program, where they offer students within the high school the opportunity to have some dual credit through their college. I then pursued that lead, and I asked John to tag along with me to make sure that we were both on the same page. Mr. Steenis has worked for quite some time to provide that opportunity to Galesburg High School students. So we are going to start a Knox College Early Entry Program, which will offer 10 dual credits for students. They have to apply in their junior year, and they apply for this program. It's going to roll out here late February, early March. These are courses that we would not offer at Galesburg High School. But in the past, students who have wanted to do dual credit at Knox have had to wait for the class to fill up and see if there are empty spots. In this case, they would take the group of students who've applied for this, and once accepted to the program, they can select the courses they want and they have their seat. So we have students in those courses, and like I said, they can earn up to 10 credits, so they can have three and a third in the fall. They have the J term, because they're on trimesters, and then the spring. So, look for the application materials to come out. I'd really like to push that. What a great opportunity. One of the benefits is if they maintain that 3.8 grade point average, they have admittance to Knox. It will just be a seamless process, and scholarships will be available to them as well. So I like that it's equitable, that all you have to do is, apply, and they're looking for those. It's not an intense application process. Ms. Ritchie, did you feel? No.
How many students could participate up to how many?
I don't know that they've decided a total number. No. We look forward to materials coming out, like I said, late this February, but they had us look at the initial application process, and it was pretty successful in meeting the needs that we had talked about. The only thing we're going to have to consider, I think, potentially is, in terms of equity, might be purchasing the books or materials, and then finding some transportation, but I'm confident I can work with some people to find resources for that. So, more information will be forthcoming. That's all I have.
The only thing that I will request is that when that gets into the hands of the counselors, that we do our best to make sure that all students are aware of that.
Yes.
I know it was 20 years ago, but as a student that really doesn't know about college opportunities, as a first-gen student, someone who's not at home pushing, my parents pushed me to go to school, but they didn't know to tell me what questions to go ask my counselor, you know what I'm saying? And so some students may not be thinking about it as an opportunity if their family isn't second education aware, inclined, etc. So just to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to help students understand that the opportunity exists. Yeah.
And Ms. Ritchie, kind of $550, $600 is what we've had kids paying for one course of dual credit at Knox recently, right? So if you think about this opportunity per child, that is a very significant extension of Knox to reach out to our students, and I'm really excited about that. So, like I said, I will provide you with information once it comes out. That's all I have.
On the bottom of your presentation, it had the information about the
yes,
skinnies being offered.
Excuse me. I did not go to page 2. Dan and Nikki, you want to come up? I have a handout for you as well.
Yeah.
I know.
It's not 10 either.
So we've had the opportunity to review the course offering book and the schedule for this coming year. We've looked at a number of different avenues for providing a skinny. And the whole goal of our group, the three of us, was to look at what would have the most educational impact. I mean, there's no point in changing for the sake of changing. But I do think the proposal that we have in front of you is one that has an educational impact, and actually I'm quite excited about the opportunity. So I will turn it over to Dan and Mindy.
Good evening, thank you for having us.
So like Tiffany said, one of the things we were trying to figure out, looking at a variety of different things, is how we can have the greatest impact for the kids. And then kind of at this point in time, also without creating a tremendous disruption to scheduling and trying to messing things up. So where we've kind of landed now, in line with our school improvement goals, is looking at our freshmen on track, which has been a big focus at Galesburg High School for a long time, but really trying to put some more traction to it, as well as kind of some of our math scores, which kind of district-wide kind of get stagnant at times. So what we've done is kind of taken some information from what we know, from our staff, and then from grade data, and we want to create a skinny pair with our physical science class, which is typically offered to freshmen, as well as a pre-algebra class, which is also offered to freshmen generally. And these tend to be students who struggle maybe a little bit more in mathematics. And so the idea behind this is that we skinny those two blocks. So with that, a physical science teacher would teach two skinny blocks, so that would be one regular block period. And then a math teacher would teach two skinny blocks for the math period. We may have to offer it on a second period as well. It just kind of depends on numbers. We'll have to run those kind of things too. And then these two teachers would also have common plan time, so they can actually plan and prepare their curriculum together. So that way math concepts can be learned at the same time that the physical science math concepts are happening. That is one of the big issues that we're hearing from physical science teachers, is that the math that, they just aren't ready for the math that is required within the science class there. Kind of some of the numbers that kind of go behind it. We had, out of 199 total grades issued, in the last two terms, we did have 39 Fs issued in physical science, which was about 20% of the grades issued. Term 1 was 21, term 2 was 18. 28 of those 39 were freshmen. We got a handful of like repeat sophomores in that, or maybe freshmen who didn't get it the first time around. 21 students had then failed either term 1 or term 2, and 9 students had failed both terms 1 and 2 for physical science. On the pre-algebra side, we had 40 total failures issued at 177 grades. 19 in term 1, 21 in term 2. 16 students failed either one or the other in term 1 or 2, and 12 students had failed both terms. I guess it is worth mentioning, both classes are two-term classes, so they are on a regular schedule, if you want to think about it, a full year class.
So on the block, typically, your class that would be a year-long class would happen just in one semester. So there's a lot of research, more recently done in education, about brain myelination. I don't know how much any of you have read about that, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about neuroscience, but essentially we know now from a lot of imaging studies that myelin in the brain grows, and there's a lot more neuroplasticity in teenage brains than we ever thought possible. You know, we used to know brains grow the most between ages 0 to 5. That's absolutely true, but teen brains can learn a lot too. We know that sometimes they have to have things repeated. It has to come up multiple times over time. You know, practice makes perfect, and more practice makes more myelin in the brain, which is what we want to do. So for these kids that have an identified skill deficit, we think that by having this partnership with teachers from 2 different disciplines, work with them throughout the year to give more opportunities to kind of look at where the skill deficits are, introduce it, cover it again, and then also give an element of social emotional learning, kind of get at some interventions that they might need to look at the student holistically. So we would have a little bit of time in that skinny block. You know, sometimes I call it hybrid because some people don't like the term skinny, but we would have some time in there for some really focused interventions so that we're meeting the needs of the students in its entirety. One other kind of neat thing, I mean, this very much, as Mr. Powell mentioned, came out of our school improvement process. It's also couched within our district improvement planning. And then another piece of it that Mrs. Springer was very focused on was kind of looking at our students that have been in the past sort of tracked in what we termed basic courses. Mm-hmm. It used to be that the students that were struggling were placed into what was called Earth Systems. So by going this route, we're in effect eliminating Earth Systems. We're eliminating what was previously a basic level course And so we're looking at the students' needs in a very targeted manner in the course where they can apply those math skills and then move on in the sequence. So we're really excited about this, and I know that you have some slides there. Don't know if you have any questions for us.
It's probably worth mentioning too that by skinning it, we would now be offering this for the entire year. So you're just taking and chunking up that information over a longer period of time. So they would still get the same amount of instruction. It's just now going to be spread out through the year. And so the hope is we'll be able to pull some data when these kids are done. And we hope to see some nice growth, nice improvements, and then stick them into kind of more of an on track, I guess you could say. We don't like to use the word track, but, kind of that whole, natural progression as opposed to this kind of lower progression that we had, like Mindy had mentioned. So I think that's worth kind of mentioning too.
I think it's important to note that we also met with Jen Good about this as well. She was thrilled about the idea. I mean, she had already started multiple ideas. She's the science chair. We spoke with her about this. She even mentioned the idea of pairing the physical science and the pre-algebra on a Friday to do some problem solving, maybe on an every other week or maybe a once a month idea. The other piece that we need to keep in mind too, that not only are these students struggling with some of the basic math concepts, but some nonfiction reading. Mm-hmm. And if they aren't given the opportunity to have small chunks where they can build on that confidence, they're not going, in my personal opinion, and what I've observed, they aren't going to be willing to try tasks that are going to challenge them further because they don't feel like they can do those basic pieces. I'm pretty confident with the excitement Ms. Good had about partnering with another math teacher and really working on some of those problem-solving skills, the students would have some success and be able to be ready for Algebra 1A and avoid maybe having to go into integrated math, which would then get them out of that cycle that they were talking about.
I'm excited. I know that we don't like to use the word tracks, but it exists. We have our courses, and students as early as 5th grade are being set on that course because they're coming out of elementary school and they're going into courses within the middle school that are faster, higher paced, which is then setting them up for the same circumstance in the high school. So I think we need to acknowledge that, and we need to figure out how we can help teach our students instead of to their deficits, to their strengths, and expect more of them so that we can get them to the place where we are confident when they are walking out our doors. We know that we didn't fail them because we're assuming that they couldn't do it. And the reality is maybe we need to readjust our thinking so we can figure out how they can. So I really, really, really like this idea. One of the other things that I talked about in another meeting related to a different topic that I also think not just within this area, but within a lot of our curriculum, we also need to be thinking about how they're engaging information. Students, I mean, we're doing this over at the institution that I teach at and that I work at. The way that they are taking in their information and the way that they view people in positions of authority, it is shifting. And so to be able to understand where our students are at right now and to figure out that they really do a lot of learning on YouTube. And what does that mean? Does that mean that we're doing more flipped classrooms? Does that mean that we're going to be doing our lessons and having them watch it? And then in the classroom, we're actually doing the problems and we're working on the, the solving instead of doing it in front of them in the day and then sending the homework home. Or maybe we're asking them to process that information instead of their homework being a worksheet. They're doing the lesson for us on YouTube and sharing the video with us, right? And just kinds of different things that we're thinking about engaging them with where they're at and how that then can be applied in life so that they're seeing that it's applicable and it's not just something they're learning in school and they're not going to use it in 20 years.
I really like going back to having the full year with the teachers. When we went to the block, one of the things that we lost was with that transition period from the middle school or 8th grade into 9th grade. Them having the students the full year like they used to in civics, they'd have them all year because they'd have them 2 semesters in all the other classes. And when we went to the block, of course, we lost that. So this relationship that they would build coming from one school to another, they lost much of that. Teachers would have the kids for only 2 terms, of course, and then they'd be on their way. So I really like the fact that we're kind of putting that back, probably with the students that need it the most. So that's really a good outcome along with that social emotional learning piece, so it's great.
It'll also be easier to measure progress
Yes.
and academic gains and things like that, as opposed to a semester snapshot. You get a year-long snapshot, so it'll be a little bit easier to measure those types of things too.
And to piggyback on that, Member Glastovich, we talked about students coming in and having, the difficulties that they have with the core classes and not having the opportunity to necessarily explore with some of the elective courses. And by putting this physical science with this pre-algebra, we'll give them an opportunity to take an elective that they may or may not have been able to take in hopes to engage them and make them feel connected to the school.
Well, I'll comment. I agree with everything you said about these two classes. I guess my reaction, though, when I saw your handout is I'm extremely disappointed that it's just these two classes. I've been a big proponent of the modified block, and I've been hearing before I got elected, and since I've been elected, all the things it could accomplish, and I think this is just a minuscule drop in the bucket. I mean, and I know we got to start somewhere. I get that.
Absolutely.
But this to me it's not the start I hoped for. I mean, all the reasons you just gave apply to so many other areas. The constant contact in short spurts throughout the year. Foreign languages, we all say we don't emphasize foreign languages enough, and I know a lot of kids, be it Spanish, German, whatever, it would sure seem to me thing to offer, a foreign language course in this. One of the big things that I've talked about, and I've heard people talk to me about is, why in the world we can't do this in some of the arts like music. And I guess I'm really disappointed of all the talking I've done to many people in this room and outside this room that I didn't hear something in the arts and music. I am sick and tired of the fact of parents talking to me that their kid can't take anything in music basically unless they devote 25% of their high school career to music. And I don't understand why, the presentation didn't include student opportunities in those areas. Yeah, this is a great idea, but to me it's a start, but it's a disappointing start. Because the way we've got this set up, we've got, what, a 2-year trial period in the contract?
Yes, it would be 2.
It's a 2-year trial period, and our 50% of our trial period is just on this. And I'm expecting and hoping for much more.
And I can appreciate that, and it's duly noted. I mean, we will definitely consider looking at others. Some of the other ones that we looked at that were maybe even offered or suggested were PE and health, and it really doesn't achieve any kind of an educational outcome in that regard. We're not saving anything, students aren't getting there's not a value add there. And with each one of these skinnies, I have to have a pair. So the challenge becomes, what am I pairing that with? And I don't disagree that it's a possibility to do maybe a foreign language, but I wonder what the pair could be that would fit in each of the student schools to equate to a classroom equivalent, of enough students to run the class. That's one of the challenges we definitely have. I don't know if you want to add to that.
There were definitely a variety of things that we kind of looked at, kind of as we moved on. Music and the arts was something that was kind of in there in the forefront for quite a long time as well. Kind of where we're at in the game, it gets pretty difficult with some of those things. And I would say too, I'll be honest, try to preserve as much of, kind of some of the arts and the bands that we do have. I think that's a pretty nice feather in Galesburg High School's cap. And to continue to have some of those things in some regard without cutting it too much and making it, kind of hurting it too much would be, I think, sad as well. But I do think there is some work that we can do additionally, but I do think this is a good start.
Well, you talk about band being a feather in our cap. Yeah, we've always had a great band program. But every other student who's not in band is completely shut out of music. Yeah, we've done a great job serving a minority of students.
Shut out.
Okay, what, if I have a student who is interested in piano but doesn't want to be in band, what can they do?
They have piano as a
Cyrus
course.
Yeah, we have piano.
We have piano as a course. You can have guitar.
Yeah, piano, guitar.
But what I'm talking about is why aren't these skinnies then? I mean, why didn't you look at those for skinnies?
Because we chose to target with our school improvement goals at this time.
If it were done on a larger scale, it would be much easier to determine those pairs. But since you're looking at such specific, you really kind of have to have something that is a natural pair when you're doing a pilot, because we're not able to do, full change.
Wholesale change.
We're not.
Yeah.
That's kind of the logistical difficulty that we looked at a lot of ways to navigate, because we wanted to get it the most impact from an educational standpoint. But with it just being a pilot and being, kind of held to certain parameters,
Which parameters are we held to? I'm not sure which parameters.
just that it's an
you're looking
initial,
under.
it's a pilot. This is
Yeah.
not a wholesale schedule change for Galesburg High School.
Yeah, because one of the things we have to think about too is, we wanted to also create something that we could build that was semi-predictable, and it's semi-predictable that most of our incoming students are going to be taking some kind of physical science or pre-algebra, or at least we have a lot of data to kind of support that we can create this kind of predictable thing, so we have a little bit better model going into it. Gives us an idea. We want to, I guess, and partly too, making sure that there is a positive impact with putting the skinny in there. Just simply doing it, we want to know. We want to know for sure that there could be some good that can come out of it. And then I hope that it does in time. If we can see some positive benefits, we can then spread this into, arts and music if we need to, English, social studies, foreign languages, these other ones that really could benefit from a smaller chunk year-round.
So as you look at the schedule, can we possibly look at something like next September for what something can look like for next year's offering instead of just before the offering's made to teachers? Because I think as a pilot program, you don't have enough data points if you have just 2 classes. I don't think you have enough to make a determination. To make a determination, you need to be able to have more points at which to make that evaluation. And instead of, from this point, I know there's a lot of things to do, but I think we're shortchanging what we can do for our class offering unless we can get something else offered a year from now.
So you'd like to see maybe at the beginning of the school year next year, something a little more comprehensive in terms of...
I think so. Otherwise, we won't, as a pilot, we won't have data points to make an assessment.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Great.
Just you can shoot us any kind of what outcomes you guys are kind of looking to see, what you would like to see. We can put in some time. I like puzzles, so you can shoot me that. I'll put that puzzle together.
I haven't used that, I'm sorry.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Do we have anything or just waiting?
No, unfortunately, Dr. Mashad is home ill. I wasn't able to present tonight.
Any questions about building reports? Then moving on to focus area, or agenda item 8, focus area 2, facilities and assistance skill acquisition. Any update from the building city committees, Dr. Asplund?
Thank you. I'm just going to leave this on with your permission as a standing agenda item, bless you, because we're going to have different updates every month. So we want to make sure that we're being very transparent with our processes here. So last month or the month before, I can't even remember now, you approved gave consent to the schedule that we were on. Subsequent to that, though, we've then gotten some feedback from at least one board member who fears that maybe we're moving too fast. So I thought we should probably at least have a little bit of a discussion about, we have a 3-year deadline more or less for those health, life, safety dollars. Earlier on in the meeting, we talked about $12 million we're asking to bond. That does not have, that's a 5 years. Yeah, I remember my law. That's a 5-year timeline, but for the health, life, safety dollars, which is the lion's share of the funds we're using, we have a 3-year deadline from the time we sell the bond. So we have 3 years to get these buildings built, essentially, but we also want to make sure we're providing as much opportunity for feedback as we can. And so I know there was at least some concern about some things that went on at Lombard with the concerns regarding shop class. Now, I'm just going to hit that one head on right away. The shop class concern, I made the decision, if anybody did, to say that we were not going to have shop at Lombard because we do not have an avenue to certify a 5th grade shop teacher, because that certification does not exist. So also we would be asking 10-year-olds to operate band saws and table saws, and I did not think that was appropriate. So we made the decision at that point that we did not think that was a good idea. And so we talked to the architects about abandoning that, but all other spaces would still be available for whatever positions and situations we needed. So if someone would like us to reverse that course on the shop class, I'm happy to debate that point with you. But I don't believe that that would be a prudent course of action for us. So that we can continue with that, or we can ask for any other concerns that anybody may have.
Right, on the Lombard, I think I shared this question, maybe I didn't. I looked over those plans that calls for a technology room. What happens in a technology room?
Essentially, right now, that's just saying that there's a room for some special, okay? We call it technology room right now, that might not be what it is. Right now, we're just looking at available space and making sure we have the right number of classrooms. So we have to call it something. That doesn't mean it's decided that it's going to be filled with electricity. We're going to,
hopefully it's electricity.
Do whatever we're going to do. That would be a good idea. But yeah, so a theremin. So we're not programming those rooms yet. We just have to call it something. And so we want to make sure that there are enough classrooms. Because I will tell you in full transparency, and Sam can attest to this, we had a call-in meeting with our architects today. I am very concerned that we don't have enough classrooms alone. Okay, that's the big issue with me, that we want to make sure we have enough classrooms, if not a couple extras. And so what we do with that afterwards, I'm not as concerned about yet, is just making sure we have enough classrooms.
And I haven't even had an opportunity to talk to you, but Brian Archibald and I went through, we coded every room, we looked at, every single person that we need. And right now, we're looking that we have 5 additional classrooms, for some flex spacing. So I felt really good about that after we went through and literally numbered the classrooms based on need. We looked at how many cross-cat we were going to need, life skills, kind of color-coded them from there. I scanned him all of my work. We went through it together. So we feel we're good with just the number of classrooms that we have. And then they're also going to price out a more extended addition for us from where the common space is, to maybe add a couple additional classrooms to see if that is something that would fit into our budget, so that if we have further growth in the future, we would have those classrooms already built. It may not be something that we can financially afford to do, but they're going to be costing that out for us, so.
And for those of you that haven't been in Lombard, it's been a long time since you've been in Lombard, they did a wonderful job rehabbing that building, don't get me wrong, but there are some rooms in there that are pretty small. And so those become problematic for us to have. Let's say, okay, that's a 5th grade class. Well, no.
100 square feet.
Right, that would not be appropriate. So we have to figure out uses for those rooms, and we will. And we label them something right now. That doesn't mean that's the final answer. It's just we have to call it something. And so nothing has been decided. And if we do need to slow down, I'm not saying we can't. I'm just saying that we have to be mindful always of that 3-year deadline to be able to spend the money. So for now, all we've really done at Lombard is say, how much space do we need, how many classrooms do we need, and then over the course of time, we would then be able to identify how we're going to fill those and what the curriculum is going to be. But, it's, as I keep saying, we're building the bridges we walk on it here. So we're going to have to continue with some of that. as we go forward. But this is the reason, one of the reasons that this is going to remain an agenda item on here. Because if people have concerns about anything that's on that schedule, these would be an opportune times for people to say, hey, I'm having really big concerns about, you know, the K4s, or I'm having big concerns about the 712. I mean, we put out schedules, we know that they can change, but we just have to try to hold them as much as we can, because we know that we have that 3-year deadline.
Keep in mind when we did the K through 4 specials, that we put a new special in there that was technology STEM.
Right.
So moving on to the 5th, 6th grade, we would hope that that would absolutely continue.
Thank you for that clarity as well, yeah. So we do believe that we need, and we've had this discussion now for the better part of a year of, and I know I started it because I had grave concerns that we were just starting to teach keyboarding in high school. And I felt that that was something that really needed to be pushed down maybe 5 grades. And so that talked about what, not just keyboarding, but, you know, our students obviously now, you know, technology is ubiquitous. And so they need to have more opportunity to explore and use those as tools. And we need to be able to instruct them on the appropriate uses for those as well. Because, you know, as we all know, those can be used for good or for ill, depending on how you focus it. So it's much better if we start them early on talking about the positive benefits of that, rather than posting things on whatever social media is out there that people spend a lot of time on.
During our discussion last week with regard to keyboarding, for example, in the elementary schools, and the teachers, and anybody out there, correct me if I'm wrong, were saying that they were having to spend time, they were trying to spend time with doing some basic keyboarding because the kids are using the Chromebooks for testing and for so
Right.
much now, and such an early day, that was another reason to try to pull that out of the teacher's classroom portion and move it in somewhere else. Because we're very, very mindful of you know, keeping those instructional minutes in the classrooms.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have consider approval of amendment to professional services agreement on the 2nd reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Well, Dr. Aspen?
There were no requested changes from last month, so those remain as they were last month. And just for clarity's sake, B and C are related. So B is a global contractor services with Leggett Architects for all services. And then item C are referent contracts that refer back to that bigger umbrella contract. So item C actually has 4 different amendments. So if we go to 2nd reading, I would put those out in separate line items.
Okay. There's no other questions about B? Allison?
Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glastovich? Lyon?
No.
Pickrell?
Okay, first reading for consider approval of capital project contract amendments. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
Yes, I'm going to share the same question I shared with you before. The fee schedule is structured in such a way, you know, they're each individual projects. And the sliding scale below is applicable on an individual project by project basis. Individual project fees cannot be combined to lower the percentage fee. I mean, that just sounds, I mean, we're giving them such a huge body of work. It sounds like they manipulate the contract, and then maybe you'll tell me again it's the way it's done, but it seems the way it shouldn't be done. We should be getting the discounted price for such a huge project, and it just bothers me greatly.
I have shared your concerns with Leggett, and they are running that through their executive partners to see if there's any ability to alter that in any way. And we would definitely have that answer before next month. I might even have it tomorrow. But as it stands right now. I'll satisfy you and say, yes, that's how it's done. But if we can get that changed, you know, they are looking to see if they can change. There is a reason why it is done that way, because
Get more money.
there's also another reason.
Oh.
Because the schedules are all different. They are doing there's different economies of scale for how they're gonna do each project, so that is typical, whether we agree with that or not, is definitely not germane to this conversation. But, you know, I only say that because I want you to know they're not taking particular advantage of us. This is typical.
Yep.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Let's come back next month for second reading, so if you have any other questions in the meantime, please get them to Dr. Asplund as soon as possible. Next up, we have the enrollment report. Do we have any questions about the enrollment report?
What do you think?
I
was concerned that we've lost 100 students at the high school. That seems like an awful big number. Is that normal? Since the beginning of the school year?
Depends on your definition of normal.
Well.
I've got 2 years of history, and it was typical of last year.
Is it average that we lose that many?
Probably from the beginning. I'd say you're close from a year ago. I have to pull the data and look at it.
And I imagine that's the combination of moving, quitting, various things, right? Okay.
It is a lot.
Does that account for early graduation, those numbers?
Yeah. We had, oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, we have mid-year graduation.
We had, well, now I don't remember. 20?
Yes. How many mid-year grads did we have?
25 or so.
Yay, yay, that's good. That's nice, no, 25 of those of that, okay.
So you're down to 75 then?
Well,
What was it?
at
Was
least
it
20.
200?
I mean, none of the other groups had anywhere near that percentage.
I don't know when that figure.
It was from the 6th day until current.
So does that count if they went into Mr. Springs entity? They may have been
No.
transferred into the other.
No, they're accounted for.
District. So Ray's, students that transfer to Ray's will move out of the district.
Yeah,
Or
well,
seventeen.
right, that's why I'm sure there's a variety of reasons, but it just, I don't know, it just hit me as a huge number, and I,
We want to run that campaign, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, at the church club. It's been a while. We ran those numbers, we didn't see the same numbers.
it says 1301 on day 6 and 1203 now.
Well, yeah, so there was also a discrepancy with how numbers were being counted for a long time. So it's hard to do an average because what we found was that we somehow, I don't know how, we were counting GAVC students in GAVC and in ours, and so we were doubling. And so that's only been since,
And that
what,
would be-
October, that we've gotten that fixed? No.
Are the
They barely paid
out-of-district
us one.
students included in this number?
Are the what?
The out-of-district alternative ed placement students? Are they
No,
included?
it says
They're
they're
listed
not
separate.
included in the
Okay.
enrollment, so.
Oh, yeah.
And you said we had 25 semester grads? All right.
And you have some third quarter grads, or third term.
Pretty typical, usually 1 or 2, very typical situation.
Any other questions about the enrollment report? So then back back to agenda item 9, focus area 3.
Oh, yeah.
Responding to the changing needs of our community. So, agenda item A, the 2018-2019 calendar, and what we think we want to do, or what we are needing to do, based on the weather that isn't finished yet. So we're having a conversation.
So, with your permission, I'd like to
Yes.
kind of front-load that with a little bit of information. To date, for those of you that haven't been keeping track, we've missed 10 days. And that's generous, because we've gotten out early a few times too, but if you're just taking full days, we've missed 10. And, we have 5 at the end of the year that we're gonna make up. So there's 5 that we still have that are outstanding, all right? And I asked the staff last week to try to get ahead of this a little bit, say, we're all concerned about missing that much time. So let's just look at the most available time that we have. And I asked them to respond to me if they could not, absolutely could not be available during spring break or at the end of the year after our designated last day. And I told them, you need to give me your reasons why, because what may seem like impossible for you may not seem impossible to me. So I got lots and lots and lots of responses, and I really, really appreciate the thoughtfulness that people put in to give me their feedback, and staff has really done a fabulous job of giving me their thoughts and concerns, and really put a lot of thought into this, and I asked the principals to engage their staff in trying to brainstorm some ideas here too. So first of all, I will give you this. I broke it down by elementary, junior high, high school, and non-certified employee, and I put Bright Futures with elementary, just so we have all that understood. And then I asked for spring break and end of the year. So 46, there were more than 46, but the ones that I deemed, yeah, those were fair. 46 people could not be here over spring break. And that means 17 at the elementary, 10 at the junior high, 9 at the high school, and 10 non-certified employees. And then at the end of the year, we have 19 people that could not be available. That's 7 elementary, 1 junior high, 2 high school, and 9 non-certified. There are also some realistic concerns at the end of the year where, for one, those students that were in the AP classes, that does them no good because the test would have already happened. And by then, we're running into the possibility of now having early outs because of heat on days that we're staying extra. So, there's some difficulty with that. Some of the easier things, and this came out of our calendar discussion, and I'll give Lori Ayton the credit for giving us the idea to moving back the quarter a week because we've had so many issues. We felt that was a good idea for the high school classes who are, transitioning at that, and some middle school classes. That those are definitely, things we should do. And then we have half days that were designated. The 27th of February, I believe, was the next one. Is that right? Yeah. And then we had one May 1st. If we took those back as instructional days, we'd effectively gain a full day of instruction. I looked into President's Day because a lot of people said, hey, what about President's Day?
Next Monday?
Correct. But even if we wanted to, that was something we had to ask a waiver from the ROE for. We did not, not knowing that was going to be needed. So we aren't even legally able to do that. So we're going to have to use that holiday next week, regardless of our opinion of whether that's a good idea or bad idea. Parent-teacher conferences on the 22nd of March would be a possibility that we could add a day back. I'm looking at these, the 19th of April, we would have to get some concessions from the GEA because it's a contractual matter, but that is a day that we could seek.
You didn't ask people about travel days for that, though, in your survey?
I did not. And then the 27th of May, which is Memorial Day, I didn't ask. I'm just saying that I don't think it's a good idea, but it's an available thing. The other thing I did look at, and I just so that we can have some conversation here. And a lot of staff members suggested this as well, is what if we added time on to the end of the day? So if we added a half hour on to the end of every day, every 2 weeks, we'd get a day back. So if we went 4 weeks of half-hour longer day, we'd get 2 days back of effective instructional time. Well, right now, we don't have to do anything. This is just what we want to do, all right?
You want children to have.
Right, but I'm just saying, we're not running afoul of the law by lengthening the day, doing whatever. This is just, what do we want to do to get some instructional time back? The way the law works is, after you've used up your emergency days, if you get approved active God days, which we'll get, we don't have to make those up. What we're saying is, no, we should try to make that up. It's a lot of days these students have missed. And so, how do we want to best try to add that time back in? So I'm really just trying to cover the waterfront here and talk about the possibilities. And then, I believe Member Lyon was the first one that gave me the idea. I thought it was a really good one. We can get 2 days of instruction back at the high school if we just say don't get finals. Because you can get all sorts of time back that way. So that's another avenue.
Second.
Correct, and that's just for the high school. And so, yeah, I mean, we're opening the gates here, and let's talk about what we want to do. Oh, I guess before we do that, just so you understand, I also spoke to First Student and said, hey, if we added a half hour on the end of the day, or if we added days on, would that be reasonable? They said, yeah, we can make whatever you need work. So, okay. So if we added the half hour back on, we know we might run into dates where, let's say, junior high track meet schedule. Okay? So we know automatically a junior high track meet equals 4 buses, right? So if you start taking the buses away from the available pool and the drivers away from the available pool, that's an issue. So the way around that is to get charter buses. Why?
I saw what they cost.
Okay. But if you get charter buses, so then we can then put a cost associated with that. So I've already alerted Mr. Matthews to, if that's something we want to investigate further, and I told him not to do anything yet, but if that's something we want to investigate further, he can meet with First Student tomorrow. We can get a real number behind that. So that's the work we've put in up front. So now, what is the will of the board?
Go.
Well, I see 3 natural days. That week that teachers are already coming there at the end of the year. They're there Monday and Tuesday. It would seem like a natural pickup, just to have school through the end of the week and pick up 3 days there.
We're talking about the 7th.
Yes.
Yes. And it's no added weeks to the year. Teachers already can be here. We know everyone's in town.
Maybe.
Right, I was gonna say. We were supposed to have graduates.
Because I told you I said I have 19 people that said they can't be here.
That doesn't
19 out
help,
of-
that doesn't help with AP, and
19
we've
out of
also
60.
got the
No, I'm not
graduates.
sure there's anything we can do about
The
AP.
graduates are gone, well, if we went to spring break.
Spring break.
I don't know. Well, and also, to be fair, some of this needs to be negotiated with the GEA, because there are contractual terms in there that we have to go in and say, hey, we said the instructional day is this, so we'd have to go in and say, well, now are you guys gonna be okay with the instructional day being 30 minutes longer? Or, the day before, the Friday before Easter is a contractual day. Are you guys okay with waiving that? So, I mean, we can't just unilaterally do things. These are things we'd have to then enter into some negotiation.
So how many days do we have to go a half an hour later to pick up the 10?
To make up the, well,
Or
we're already
make
doing
up
5.
the 5.
To make up the 5, we'd have to go, what did I just say? We'd have to go 10 weeks.
But you said we could make up 1 full day by taking those 2 half days and
Correct.
make them, so you're only talking about 4 then.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's 8 weeks.
So 8 weeks.
From whenever we can get it started.
And then what did you say the buses interfere with?
Well, so for instance, in the spring, you're gonna have all sorts of softball, baseball, track, events that are already planned, which some of them get rained out and all those things, but we can't assume that they're going to. So that not only takes away the available buses, but also takes away available drivers to run the regular routes if we extend the day.
But once again, that would be something that would have to be agreed to.
Correct.
But just picking up those 3 days at the end of the year,
Would have to be something we agreed to.
because,
Because we already agreed on the contract, or agreed on the last day of the year.
Right.
And if, if somebody said, well, I've already made plans based on what you told me was the end of the year last year, there's gonna be some contractual right to having that time. Because we already said when the last day was gonna be.
but we also don't have the contract, teachers are contracted for 180 days.
Correct.
So the intention is to pay people for days they didn't work?
I'm not saying what the intention is, I'm saying this is there are some boundaries there. Luckily, we have an attorney sitting right over there with a nice-looking beard, who can give us his input on what that would mean.
What's
Most
your
likely,
microphone?
thank you. I think most likely you'd be looking at bargaining implications on the majority of the changes that have been proposed.
Even, what if we don't make up any of the days? The 5 days? What's the implication of that?
Well, you're not changing you're not changing your calendar, you would be using the scheduled emergency days, and then you're essentially declaring an act of God for the days that are over that, which the ROE will allow you to do.
May I ask a follow-up, just so we make sure we cover both sides of this argument? So we've also elected to pay the non-certified hourly employees during the time that we had Act of God days. So what if we decided at the end of the year, even though our contract says they're gonna get paid 186 days, including holidays, it does not say, that's all it says, okay? So what if we decided, because we paid them 2 weeks in arrears, we said, you know what, never mind, we're gonna take those 5 days back?
I'd want to double check that with the wage and hour provisions and make sure that wouldn't be a problem.
Because we've essentially paid, and we would be paying some people for days not worked, because, if we don't make up the time, we are going to be paying the certified staff for the time that they were not teaching. Well, depending on what he finds out there. Currently, the non-certs as well. We are not currently losing any revenue as a result of this. I know this isn't necessarily a revenue discussion, but I'm just saying so everybody understands everything. It is a lot of time that's instructionally lost, and it would be, at least, and I know a lot of other people's, but I'm only going to speak for me, it would be my desire to try to find a way to make up some or most or all of that time.
I agree. I definitely think it should be made up. I like the half an hour, add in a half hour thing if that would work. I never even thought of something like that, because I thought, how can we take spring and how can we take, it was a big thing, the calendar for the end of the year, people wanted to know that last date and stuff, so.
Well, and I once again really want to thank the staff. I've been sent well over 100 emails of people with their thoughts about what we can do, and so our staff is very concerned. I mean, we're all very concerned.
We could also talk to First Student and see if, for some schools, or for some, like maybe the K-5s, we could start a half an hour early, and then run at the end of the day for maybe our junior high and high school.
Well, we'd have to add a whole bunch of buses.
Yes.
Or we're
Oh, that's
talking.
gone.
Yeah. Or we'd have, there's going to be some transportation issues.
Double routing and then make that work.
So I guess at this point, really what I'm looking for is some guidance from the 7 of you. What direction do you want us to move as we fortunately have a meeting Wednesday night with the bargaining committee over the other, we can at least start that talk.
What about,
Wednesday night, 13th. That's the steering committee, which is the bargaining committee.
what about online or packet learning? So we can't have school on President's Day.
Right.
Because we didn't have waivers.
Right.
And if, to Member Lyon's point, that folks may have already planned weekend family trips for the Easter holiday weekend. Is there anything to say that we can't do some form of online or worksheet packet learning or?
It's fine, I mean, some people are doing that, everybody doesn't count, but like, again, the inequality between schools and teachers, it's just, it's so high.
Well, and
I mean, so it might not be formal instructional time, but if it's a way for us to get back something, I don't know.
well, and I don't want to stifle any of that discussion. I just personally get nervous equating, and you didn't say this, and I'm being too reductive here, but equating worksheets with instruction.
Right.
That, you know, the more we can put the human being, the teacher, there's a special relationship with the teacher and the student, the more we can focus on that, I would think is the proper avenue to take. So is there anybody saying we shouldn't do anything? I didn't throw that one in there. So as it stands
Well,
right.
I agree that we should try to get as much of the instructional time back as we can.
So if we went into a discussion of, and that May 1st date is still on there as green, we can easily take that back to white, meaning full day. So you'd have that full day, that's an easy one. The 27th May 1st, 27th February, May 1st, that's one day. Okay, because that's 2 halves. So that's a simple one. You know, do we want to look at any other days? Remember, Lion does want to look at 5th, 6th, 7th. Is there anybody else that wants to look at any other days, or would we rather pursue the extra time at the end of the day?
Well, you had mentioned, I don't think you reviewed that one, the parent-teacher conference day.
Or the parent-teacher conference day, which is the 22nd of March. That would take us.
No, it
correct.
takes us to 4.
Well, it'd take us to 4.
What?
Then 3, you're right, 3.
3.
Yeah, 3. That would be 3 days. So then that'd be 6 weeks of 30 minutes if you wanted to get it all in.
And then you also have Good Friday, 4/19, that would pick up one other day.
Yes, you could also do Good Friday.
Okay, I'm just interested. The 2 half days are 1.
Right.
Well, and yeah, okay, so Member Cervantes brings up a fantastic point.
Oh, yeah.
We might not have
Like
school
during the
tomorrow.
year.
So, you know.
Makes that decision. Then say there should be school tomorrow. Take care of it.
Right, but we don't know.
I did drive by your house the other day. I did.
Road's pretty lousy, isn't it?
That's terrible. I would never go west out of your house as long as I live.
Seniors.
Yeah, it's just really bad. Matter of fact, turned around in the middle of the road and came back even.
I've got some questions about the high school schedule.
Absolutely.
I mean, all these ideas, I understand them for below high school. But we're in which term right now? At the high school?
Term 3.
Okay. And we've already decided to push back the start of term 4
Right.
by 5 days.
Right.
Because we've lost 5 days in term 3.
Right. And that's a great point. We're gonna lose a lot of that term 3 time, and we're gonna add it to term 4.
That's my question.
No, it's a great point.
8 days in term 3.
Yeah, for those classes that are only 1 term, I don't have a good answer for you. It's a great point.
And for me, that's where online learning, I get it, in-person instruction.
So
Right.
of all 10 of our days, they haven't all come off term 3. have
No,
they?
2 came off of term 2.
So 8 days have come off term 3.
The numbers up here, 44 and 44 for term 3 and 4
Yeah.
are current, because we had like 48 days or something. It was a much higher number in term 3.
I know, I remember
Yeah.
that from when we were setting the calendar.
And we did do that on purpose because we were trying to account for,
Testing and bad weather.
correct. So we knew that we were gonna be accounting for some of those days, but we never in any kind of frame of reference thought we'd be having to account for this many days.
Will we still be dismissing seniors 2 weeks early?
We do not, no. Matter of fact, Mr. Houston,
I'm sorry. Thank you.
how much before graduation are the seniors getting out this year?
23rd, didn't I say? What was
What was the
that?
question?
What?
Senior's last day? Friday, 23rd is what I sent out, yeah.
May 23rd.
26.
26th.
Good going.
Had to start somewhere.
Okay, so if I could go back to high school in the days here, because it makes a decision on how I want to make up
Sure.
time. We had 48 in third term.
It was high.
It was 48? Speak right up. And so we're down to
Now it's
40.
Revised.
But we're adding 5.
But those will be on to term 4.
No, we moved to start of term 4 back.
That's it, isn't that in here already?
Now they're 44 and 44.
Oh, you're correct. No, you're correct. So we added more days to the end of, yeah. So we moved it back though.
Is this reflecting that?
We lost
Yes.
8, but we just added
Thank
5.
But they weren't all in term 3.
Something
Well,
else
we've lost
raised.
10.
We lost 10.
2 were in November.
But, right, and then our 5 Fridays were built in already to the calendar. So they became the instructional days.
So that's what made it
Four.
44.
That's where, so it's 44 and 44.
Okay.
It's down to 44 and 44.
Term 3 is 44, term 4 is 44.
When we add back those emergency days.
Right.
I trust you.
Play 41. And when are the AP exams?
First week of February, first week of May, right? But that's if we go with the early test date, because there's a later test date that is an option.
There is, I got an email earlier today from an AP teacher who said that they were not interested in applying for the later date. That's all I got. I don't have any context to it or anything, so I don't know if they said they were.
They met and decided as a group that they did not want to petition for the late testing date.
And why is that?
The year of the strike, student scores suffered, and they attributed it to the lag between when other seniors were done and then the testing. In this case, our students are actually still in session until the late testing.
Okay.
There's also a fee that is required for late testing option unless we get the waiver.
How much is
Which it
it?
may be that other schools are using the weather as the active 5 days for.
It's $45 a test.
Correct.
All right.
There's no science, I mean, we didn't actually do it. I mean, we can't actually say for certainty with causation
Correct, I think you can.
or testing and strike, right? It's anecdotal, it's not causation.
So just so I understand, do you know exactly when the late testing date is?
It's the 20s of May.
Okay, so the seniors would still be in school.
Part of the time, yes.
Yeah.
So there was a concern by the AP teachers of a lag time between finishing the classwork and taking the test.
I think that.
I didn't understand what you said the reasoning was.
That perhaps once the seniors were gone, they kind of checked out in terms of all of their schooling.
Absolutely.
And then the scores lagged as a result of that.
Because there was a break between checking out
Yes.
and the test.
Yes.
When is the
We don't
test?
have that.
Wendy?
Well, we wouldn't
That's
have that
not
this time.
the case this
The
year.
regular test is the first week of May.
First week
I
of
have
May.
dates here
2 weeks
from-
of May.
So
but
all
the tests are
all the seniors are still in those AP classes. Are you talking about seniors who were in first semester AP classes?
No, either.
Either. That means that any student who's in an AP class their senior year is done with their instructional time the first week of May.
Yeah, I know that because I've seen what they've done after.
Right.
The late testing dates this year are Wednesday, May 22nd, Thursday, May 23rd, and Friday, May 24th.
And so,
So they're still in school.
Yeah.
Well, that's fixed,
And they
that's the
weren't-
solution for AP.
So you could engage them in conversation about that, right?
absolutely. And there were, I know of at least 1 or 2 teachers that were interested, did bring that up and were interested. They just got on the same page after discussion. But yes, they would be very open to dialogue on that. I don't think they
It would seem to me that keeping instruction up until right before the test would be the most advantageous to the students.
How many students are in AP classes?
We give probably about 120 exams to 75 unique students.
And the AP, just for clarification, the ones that run for the full year, 4 full terms, that would be AP Calculus.
What about physics?
Physics 1 and 2 don't always have the same students. There are some students that take all 4 terms, but not quite half of them.
Okay.
How many days did we have in terms 1 and 2?
40 and 41 we want.
Okay, so right now we have 40, then 41, 44, 44.
Correct.
I know that we have more days, it just. I had a student in AP. And the instructional time that they have missed at this point, to me, is massive. At the high school level. And I get that we can't make decisions about what days we're gonna build back in or not based on one level of education, but it's also not fair.
That's important, though.
Right, I mean, it's not, fair to them, as students who are gonna be using these test scores for credit in, in higher education to
Probably save lots of money.
And save, right.
But I've been thinking about that, I was thinking that maybe we ought to, during our advocacy time, go ahead and dedicate the AP advocacy where we can let the students go to the AP teachers during advocacy time, and we relieve the other students from them and figure out what we can do. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you
25 minutes?
It's 22 minutes.
You could substitute some time in there to make up that, but you'd have to get rid of some of those students, and we can figure that out where we are.
And I'll be honest with you, the calculus students are already in
Yeah,
that classroom for the homework during that time anyway.
Well, but we can make it more conducive by pulling some of the others out.
Do we offer AP classes first and second term?
Yeah. AP Bio, AP.
Well, why aren't we pounding our fists that those kids only got 40 days?
Well, when they set
we're
up the
all upset that-
schedule, when they set up the schedule for AP, there was a decision made that the math would go for a full year, which gave them at 85 minutes a day.
Well, that makes sense.
Certainly gave them a lot more time, and I just don't think that the advantage was given in some of the other areas to do that. And scheduling probably also, but instead of going 55 minutes a day for 4 terms, they get to go 85 minutes a day. And then, of course, like Tiana said, when they take the test, the 5th of May, then they basically don't have, they've got, 2 weeks at least, where there's nothing there's no, unless it's just additional learning that the teacher is providing them, but they wander a bit.
Well, and just one other little thing, since you brought it up, Wayne. Last year, we recommended to end the semester after Christmas to balance out the terms, and it was decided that we weren't going to do that. So, we had this discussion last year.
And I remember it.
And we decided that we were going to start a little later, and we were going to truncate the first semester, essentially.
I know several of us were upset about it then, too.
But to your point, I'm now trying to count the days of instruction that AP courses actually have if they're doing their exams the first week of May, if we didn't have any weather. Right, because it might actually, I'm not gonna say if we don't have any weather, because that's why we built in extra days of 3rd quarter because of weather.
Right. And next year,
So it
AP
actually might be
exams
actually
go
more on
to
par.
November, correct?
What's that?
Next year, AP exams go to November?
That's correct.
What?
We just got that change.
So what do the kids do after November?
Don't have AP classes.
It's a joke, right?
What do we mean that they're moving to November? So you take them
November.
in the year, and then you take them 6 months later? Take the exam 6 months later?
They're opening an exam time in the fall as well.
Oh,
They showed
okay.
that students from lower income backgrounds perform better when they test and not have that other opportunity for testing.
You should have never signed.
We got a notification from them. So, I would make that up, that would be a really boring thing to make up.
So then what we're saying is AP Bio, which is offered in the first 2 terms.
Page helpful? No.
They'd be testing at the end of that.
Adding
Correct.
testing, yes.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
I mean, it is a good thing, because I think it's one of the reasons why I don't think Tavian tested in bio because of that reason, and he just did physics and calculus.
So without Maury's idea of 3 days in last week, what were the ways to make up the 2 days?
We could do, well, the half days, May 1st and February 27th, and then the parent-teacher conference day, which is currently that orange date up there, which is March 22nd.
That's 2 days.
So that's 2 days. We could also talk about Good Friday, that's 3 days. We all kind of agreed that Memorial Day was a bad idea.
My preference in thinking about all this would be the first 2 days you mentioned, absolutely 150%. Good Friday, I would like to be able to do it if it's workable. And then I would stop on that, stop there and hope that Mr. Houston and his team could come up with something that would help these AP students. And that we allow him the flexibility to do that. And I don't mean to say the wrong thing, and I'm sure there would be some toes he would have to try very hard not to step on, because everybody thinks that their instruction is important. But if some of these people really want to prioritize those AP things, and I think Jeff has come up with a way to help do that. And knowing the AP teachers, I think they'd be more than willing to work with him to do that.
We can apply for the waiver, but we have some contingency funds that could cover the additional costs if the test date was moved back.
Yeah, I'm not even,
Assume that
I'm not even, and when I was talking, I'm not even sure that would be necessary. I mean, I would sure like them to consider it, but I'm not positive it would even be necessary if we make up the 3 days the way we're talking about. We're down,
Well, and I guess,
not even sure what we're down.
considering in the past, for whatever reason, seniors left really early, and now we're not, I guess, and I have not had any time at all to dialogue this with the teachers, so I'm just asking the question. What is the educational value of having the test early? What are they doing after the test? If they take the test the first week of May and then they've got 2 weeks or 3 weeks of what? I mean, I guess I'm looking at it from that perspective too. Like, why wouldn't we give it the second testing date? Because what else are they going to be doing?
Excellent question.
Excellent question.
It's exactly the same thing that we were concerned about the seniors doing.
Well, right,
Yeah, same thing,
exactly.
so.
Okay, so what I've heard, we all agree those easy half days, that was easy. March 22nd, April 19th, try to go for those and then see where we are. And then obviously, Mr. Houston's going to do what Mr. Houston's going to do, and you can report back next month as to what we're doing to try to help the AP students. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to almost our last agenda item. Consider approval of the 2019-2020 school calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Member Sharkey. Okay, Dr. Asplin.
Thank you. You have a calendar up on the screen let me first say that thank you so much to the calendar committee, who just did a wonderful job. And not only representing the needs of the people in their building, but really coming together to all understanding that everybody has their own wants and needs, and everybody really, really worked together to try to do what's best for everybody. So it was a really high-functioning committee that did a fantastic job, so I'd like to thank them again. What we have here, because of all of the construction, we talked about 1 or 2 years of an aberrant schedule from what we're used to doing. Okay, so everybody's used to having a spring break. I will show you that's not on here. We all know, we talked about starting school later and did this last year. Well, this one moves it back to earlier. We are trying to get out of school as early as we can to allow as much construction time without students in the buildings. However, you'll see then, because of we're trying to learn from our past, not only do we have 5 emergency days, and we don't have the Fridays this time because we're rolling the dice, we're not going to use them. We have 10 emergency days because we don't want to be stuck in this position again next year. We can go, you know what, now we know what to do. We got these days at the end, and we're just telling people don't make plans. Now, you can certainly chop 5 of those off, 4 of those off, 3 of those off, whatever you want to do. But I put them up there because I thought, you know what, this is kind of reflective of what our issues have been. In addition, as you know, but for anybody that's listening at home doesn't, the state changed its rules, so now it's 176 student attendance days, and you only have to have 2 teachers institute. And so that is also reflected in here. So there's 176 student attendance days. It still adds up to 185, although ours adds up to 190. But it's, essentially the same. But you'll see the ends of the quarters, all the times are in there, for early outs and all those contractual things we have to do. The parent-teacher conference, the April, okay, so the holiday, what's it say there?
Holidays, no, we're giving a holiday on.
It was just because we hadn't had, so the real strange thing in there is we have 2 emergency days up in March.
Yeah, I was trying to figure March out.
So that was an idea by the committee as we started looking at it, like, how can we not lengthen the year out much more, and how can we put some days in there and try to figure out, so those are emergency days that currently would be 2 days off because there's no spring break, and it was kind of just a, hey, let's give some people a breather. But if the weather's really terrible, we can put those back in December or January and say those are attendance days.
So what about the 2 days before that?
Those are signified, those purple means 1 hour early outs because those are contractual, it's the end of the quarter.
Right, but
okay.
But you're telling people at the end of the quarters, there's no need to have finals, right? Aren't they?
Not for next year.
Not for next year, I haven't.
Just this year.
I have said those need to be re-examined, absolutely. I've said I do not require them to do them. But because there was some idea that this office made everybody give finals, it didn't come from me. So I have to give finals. Some people it's advisable, and some people it isn't. So those purples are the designated contractual, and then they're in April, since Member Lyon had asked that question. So you have a 3-day week or a 5-day weekend in April that's in lieu of a spring break, trying to get some other time, because there was a real sacrifice by members, people trying to say, there were people there that passionately said we have to have spring break. There were people that passionately said we do not. And so they were trying to meet in the middle.
This is quite clever.
Yeah, so as I said, I really commend the committee who just really tried to work together to try to get something for everybody, knowing that nobody would get everything.
Doesn't our contract say that the evening conferences will be on Thursday nights?
No.
What does it say?
It says that they have to be
Within X number of days?
within a certain number of days, and they're voted on by the buildings.
This one, the earliest they could be is Wednesday nights, right? I should go back to the contract. I'll look at it.
This is our attempt to try to address all the issues we have out there and still, including the emergency days. Now, something I want you to be aware of. So, I think it's a good idea to plan for those extra emergency days because obviously this year we're kind of left flat-footed. But just so you understand, Act of God days can only be asked for when you've exhausted your emergency days. So if we put in this many emergency days, you have to make them up, okay? So if you have 10 days out, you have to, now, I think that's a good thing. I just want everybody to understand that. So you can't go, forget it. No, you said you were gonna do it, so now you're gonna do it. If you don't use them, then you don't, obviously you don't, I mean, if you don't need them, you don't have to use them.
What
That's what I
order do they
assume.
come off in? Then they come off starting at the June 1st?
So where we would start,
Where you would start taking them off would be the.
it would very much depend. So it's a great question. So if it happened in February, like now, we would say that March date would come off. If it happened the week before that, we would probably go, okay, we're just gonna move it down to the ones before because people are gonna start assuming, things are gonna happen. So there's some flexibility there. As it stands right now, we just do the first day available. But we would have to put out a very big communication piece to parents to say, these 2 days right now, you wouldn't be in attendance unless they're emergency days, so don't make plans, essentially is what it's days off, but don't say, I'm going to Vail. Well, don't do that.
We're back to high school terms.
Yes.
You've got all the emergency days at the end, those 10 days. I assume you're gonna have to talk about changing the end of.
We'd have to change the end of third term.
Okay.
Which they were, we're doing this year.
Right.
Just trying to balance them out. That one's easier change. I mean, that's just something we can do on the fly. The day school starts and the day school ends are a little harder to change because people start making plans, understandably so.
Okay, so this is a lot of food for thought. So chew on it.
Yep.
And you have questions or you have
Be back here next.
other suggestions or things you'd like the committee to look into? Or to confirm, let Dr. Asplin know. Okay. And like that, you have now reached agenda item 11. Comments by the board. Oh, yes.
I may have missed it in my notes. I think you still need to approve your minutes. I think you jumped over that.
We did, we jumped over.
Oh, we did the consent agenda at 7:30.
Okay, it was in the consent agenda.
Oh, it was in.
Yeah, it's consider approval of minutes. Yeah, it's all within.
All right, never mind.
Thank you.
It's
No,
there.
this is why you're sitting at the table. All right. Comments by the board members. Member Glasnovich.
I just want to thank Dr. Asplin for getting up at an ungodly hour every morning for the last, 100 days. And I know it's a very difficult decision to make, but I appreciate you taking so much time and diligence and keeping everybody informed. And I haven't heard any complaints. I'm sure there will be people who would complain, but it's always best to be safe rather than sorry. So I appreciate that very much.
Member Schruby.
Likewise, I also appreciate you doing that. I have received some positive feedback from parents, really appreciating the transparency of the decision-making process and how difficult it is to make that decision. I'd also like to acknowledge our Human Resource Director, Tiffany Springer. She, for those that don't know, got the 20 under 40 award from the Galesburg Chamber of Commerce, and I think that's a pretty nice representation for our school district.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd also like to recognize your daughter for the singing at Steele School today. I don't know if everybody saw that or not, but she, as part of the Carl Sandburg Historical Foundation, she sang to the students there, and it was posted on social media. I saw that. It's pretty cool.
I'll show you a picture.
It is a beautiful scene.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Member Pickle.
Well, I lost my mic, so I'll just tough I too thank Dr. Vaslin and the administrative staff for the school days and calling those as they need be. And I would also like to thank the teachers and staff that responded to your feedback email, because I myself got an email that said people were still timid and scared, and I appreciate you asking for the feedback, because if you ask for it, you obviously want to receive it. So I'm grateful for those that did respond to you when you put the call out there. And I would like to thank my two neighbors sitting in the gallery still, because I know the roads aren't great, so I have faith that you two are still here, so everything will be okay when I follow you guys home. So thank you for still being here.
Member Bay.
I wanted to put a shout out for that we had 20 students to be chosen for Illinois State Scholars. Have to congratulate the bowling team on the first ever Western Big Six Championship. And hometown heroes. And I'm sorry, Tiana. We knew it was going to happen. She's too young, it was going to happen. You know. And then also we had 3 employees, Deb Craddy, Teresa Powell, and Jane McGee, that were recently recognized for their work with United Way. So I wanted to put that out there on the record as well.
Member Sakem?
I have no comments.
Member Lane?
Still before 10, okay, we'll keep it. Well, I'd like to say I went to the junior high play.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, I know you were there. We were almost neighbors there. It was a lot of fun. I just wish they would have done it in a smaller venue, like Lombard. We were little children in this big stage in this big room, but it was very well done. It was pretty well attended. It was good to see them doing it. Wish for more opportunities. There are 3 things I'd like to see explained to us in the future more. So maybe this isn't just comments, it's also, I'd like to have a careful, I want to hear more about summer school in terms of what we're doing. You've sort of been alluded to tangentially. As I asked the question in my notes and I saw the bills, I'd like some information about what we are getting from Amplify, because it was $205,000. I mean, and I'm still not happy with the answers I received on. I still want to see why we're using kindergarten testing on computers, because I still feel it's an inappropriate medium for children that age. I'm finished before 10.
Okay. Thank you, Member Lane. I have a few comments. For the record, I get teased a lot as the current person sitting in this chair.
You do a great job.
Because the meetings that I oversee are never short. For the record, when Member Pickrell is at this table, it is usually during the summer, when all of these wonderful, heavy things that we're talking about at our tables now are not happening, just for the record.
Work is year round.
Correlation is not causation.
I am going to now do a quantitative study of the number of meetings Member Pickrell has presided over versus Member Cervantes, and when those have taken place. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I too I actually want to thank the whole community. Dr. Asplin, you know, he gets up, he drives the roads because, you know, from his lived experience, he understands that sometimes decisions can be made without those living outside of city limits experience and what they might be going through when they have to get on the road or the parents have to get on the road for a school day. And so I appreciate that. But I also appreciate the patience of the community. This has been a really, really rough winter and we're not out of it yet. And so I know that it can be frustrating if we're waiting or you feel like we're waiting until the last minute to call a day. You know, we're trying to do our best to make sure that our students are where they should be in that classroom, learning and engaging. And so sometimes it may not happen as soon as some parents would hope for it to happen. And I get that. There's daycare, there's work, there's all of those things. And so I just appreciate the patience of the community as we work through this, hopefully not beginning to be normal kind of winter. The second thing I would like to say is yes to Chloe Day. You have decimated my records. But, you know, it's a positive thing because those things were on the book for 25 years and, you know, those things aren't meant to last. And so it's actually been quite exciting to see some excitement around the team. I wish I would have been able to win a Western Big Six title. We weren't part of Western Big Six when I was in school. And even though they didn't make it to where they wanted this last weekend with sectionals, I have the utmost faith that in the next couple of years, they will probably break that record as well. I also want to congratulate, we've got two wrestlers going to state next weekend, which is a feat that my son missed 3 years in a row by 1 point, so I know how important that is to those two young gentlemen, and I'm just so very proud. And then, if you don't see me enough sitting at this table, some of you will be able to catch me on Thursday, as I will be guest conducting the final song for the band concert. And I'm really hoping that I can keep the tempo, and the students are looking at me like, oh, where are you at, Mr. Fuentes? Because we're speeding up and we're not supposed to be. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. We have to get your agenda items from Member Lyons. Do we have anything else from anyone else?
Yes, I was wondering if there'd be any cost savings to maybe closing Gale a year ahead of time and seeing if that's even a feasibility. Maybe we can do a feasibility study, see if that's something we can consider, or if so, how much we might be able to save by doing that.
We'll put those numbers together.
I appreciate it.
We'll present it next month.
All right, wonderful. Anything else?
I don't know if you were extended an invitation from Mrs. Hennepin, but she's doing a Black History Month. It was rescheduled. The students are doing actually kind of a play at all of the elementary schools with several students from across the district in the K-3. So I think that would be something that would be well attended. The students have been working diligently, and I think they're glad that it's actually coming to fruition because we had to move the date. So I'm glad it's gone from one school to all the schools.
Yeah, we'll have to get some information about that.
I can share that out.
Thank you. All right, so our next meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting will be Monday, March 11th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh my gosh.
Save it up all day to do.
Second.
I didn't know, I didn't get that memo.
Allison.
Gus, or all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, sorry.
It's so much fun, you know.